bosses.
She could have said Stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, oh, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK.
Sven Goran Eriksson.
And much loved former England gaffer Sven-Göran Eriksson has passed away, aged 76, and will pay tribute to the international manager, the international playboy, and the legend who forever gave England fans that miracle 5-1 Mullering in Munich. Now, before the general election, Sir Keir Starmer promised to relight the fire of optimism. Well, tomorrow he'll tell us things will get worse before they get better. Forget Tony Blair's things going to get better. Now it seems things are going to get bitter for beleaguered British voters. And there are over 90 arrests, 3 stabbings and 15 police officers assaulted on the opening day, family day indeed, of the Notting Hill Carnival. Critics say it's dangerous, but fans claim it brings in over £300 million annually to the London economy. I'll be joined across the show by 3 top former London cops and ask them, is it time to ditch the Notting Hill Carnival? And one of Britain's most iconic supergroups, Oasis, look, definitely maybe, set to announce a comeback tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. If they get up at 8 a.m, that is, they must have changed. Now get your champagne supernova at the ready. All of that and more to come between now and 6 p.m. Their usual ways, please send your views and post your comments by going to gbnews.com/your say. Sven-Göran Eriksson, he was the gaffer that got us to embrace the continent, a new way of doing football. Much, much liked, well loved across the game, and will be very, very much missed. We'll pay tribute to him throughout the show. And let me know, is it time to ditch Notting Hill? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories. Former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson has died at the age of 76. The Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001. Sven also managed a series of high-profile clubs such as Manchester City, Benfica, Roma and Fiorentina. Following his death, the Prime Minister has paid tribute to him, saying he was deeply saddened by the passing. He went on to say he'll be remembered for his tremendous contribution to English football, which brought joy to so many people over the years. He also said our thoughts are with his family. In other news, it's been confirmed today that everyone has been accounted for after a major incident was declared following the breakout of a fire overnight at a block of flats in Dagenham. Over 100 people were evacuated from the building, with 2 people taken to hospital. London Fire Commissioner Andy Rowe says a full investigation into the fire and its cause will now be underway. He said, "We know there will undoubtedly be concerns around the fire safety issues present within the building, and this will form part of our report." A British man killed by a missile strike in eastern Ukraine has been named as safety advisor Ryan Evans. The 38-year-old was part of a reporting crew working with the news agency Reuters when the hotel they were staying at in Kramatorsk was struck on Saturday. The agency says they're devastated by his death and they're now urgently seeking more information about the attack. The strike also put 2 other journalists in hospital. One of those remains in a serious condition. This morning, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz laid flowers at a memorial site where 3 people were killed and 8 others injured in a stabbing on Friday. The 26-year-old behind the attack in Western Germany has been named as Issa al-H. That was after he gave himself up to the police. The Syrian national's now being investigated by German federal prosecutors for links to the Islamic State terror group. Italian prosecutors have placed the captain of the super yacht which sank off the coast of Sicily last week under investigation. It's been reported that James Cutfield, a 51-year-old New Zealand national, is being investigated for manslaughter and shipwreck. The vessel's sinking led to the deaths of British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, his 18-year-old daughter Hannah and 5 others. The woman in a critical condition in hospital after she was stabbed at Notting Hill Carnival had attended that event with her child. 3 people were stabbed yesterday at the annual event. Police have also said 15 officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on that first day. A heavy police presence is now expected today for the main parade as it passes through the streets of West London. In the Middle East, tensions have escalated between Israel and Hezbollah after an exchange of fire on both sides. The Israeli military carried out a series of airstrikes in southern Lebanon earlier yesterday morning, saying it believed Hezbollah was planning to carry out an attack of its own. The Iran-backed militants then launched drones at Israel, allegedly in response to the killing of one of its top commanders in an airstrike on Beirut last month. Well, in response to this, British Foreign Secretary David Lammy has urged restraint on both sides. Back home, the NHS hospital discharge system has been described by the government as broken. A new survey has revealed almost a fifth of UK care providers reported this week long waiting times for people to be transferred. 17% of respondents said the average length of time for a person to be discharged into their care was 1 to 2 weeks, while around 7% saying the average wait was 3 or more. And finally, the world's oldest man turns 112 today. John Tinnerswood was born in Liverpool on this day in 1912 and says the secret to his long life is just luck. Asked how he feels to be turning 112, he told Guinness World Records, "In all honesty, no different." He said, "I don't feel that age. I don't get overexcited about it. That's why I probably have reached it." Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now to our top story this afternoon. Sir Keir Starmer is set to announce that things will get worse before they get any better. Now, I don't remember that in the manifesto, do you? And the Prime Minister also faces cronyism allegations as major Labour Party donor Lord Wahid Ali was given a Downing Street security pass despite not having a formal job on the premises. He told us he'd stamp out this kind of thing, didn't he? So is the honeymoon period now officially over for Sir Keir Starmer? And it's not even Christmas. Well, to discuss this, I'm now joined in the studio by GB's reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, the honeymoon period we were promised would last perhaps until Christmas.
Yeah.
This has been a shorter period than a wet weekend in Blackpool. But where's all that optimism gone? Now, we were promised with Tony Blair things only get better.
Yeah.
Now things can only get bitter. 5 minutes in and it's all doom and gloom.
It's not looking good, is it? So tomorrow we're going to have this doom-laden speech where he talks about all of this, saying we've got a lot of tough days ahead of us. You know, don't expect any rabbits out of the hat in Rachel Reeves' speech budget. in October. It's going to be miserable. Tax rises all over the place, spending cuts. Already had the winter allowance cut. That's causing trouble within the party. Obviously, the riots as well, overcrowding in prisons. I mean, their in-tray is overflowing with problems. And now you have this cronyism story brewing, which in just the last 24 hours is getting worse and worse. You mentioned Lord Wahid Ali. He is a big-time Labour donor. £500,000, I think, in the last 20-odd years since New Labour, since he was appointed to the Lords by Tony Blair. He's even given quite a lot of cash to Starmer personally, including giving him a makeover. He's giving him some new glasses and all that, even though he still looks basically the same to me. Anyway, he has a parliamentary pass for the last few weeks. Downing Street initially obfuscating on this, and then they say, oh, actually, don't worry, he doesn't have that pass anymore. Well, fine, but why did he have it? That's unusual because he doesn't have a job, an official job in the party or in number 10. And who authorised it? Now, they're not answering those questions. You know, add that to the existing issues around the civil service impartiality row, with a bunch of Labour insiders, donors, advisors getting plum jobs at the top of Whitehall, despite the fact that Whitehall is supposed to be completely separate from the party machine and supposed to maintain its impartiality. So, look, what are we, 6-7 weeks in? And no wonder Starmer's giving this sort of speech, because it's not looking good.
It's interesting how Lord Wahid Ali used to run ASOS, the clothing chain, and indeed they gave him £2,485 to Keir Starmer for multiple pairs of glasses. So people are calling this passers for glasses, which I quite like. And that got a nice little ring to it. Nevertheless, this is precisely the sort of whiff of jobs for the boys, jobs for the girls, jobs for the donors that the Labour Party were perennially throwing back at the Conservatives. 5 minutes in power, woof, doing the same thing.
Well, I think that's the crux of this. So the Tory party are going to be loving this because it gives them an opportunity to say, look, told you so, you're no different. I mean, you're rolling around in the muck with the rest of us. When you make yourself purer than pure, you have to hold yourself to higher standards. The public aren't going to say, oh, well, it's different, you know, it's appropriate in certain circumstances. No, you're all the same. That's the problem, the charge that's going to be thrown at them. Now, on this and on the speech tomorrow, the bet is it's going to be OK because they have enough political capital early in their premiership, they can get away with it. The election isn't for 4.5 to 5 years. So, you know, within that time, maybe everyone will have amnesia. And by the time they get to the next election, the bet is this sort of stuff will be in the history books, really.
Adam Cherry, superb start to the show. Thank you very much. Now, Sir Keir Starmer's negative approach seems to vary very, very greatly with the formerly charismatic and optimistic tone struck by Tony Blair. And joining me now to discuss this is the political presentation coach, Graham Davis. Superb to have you. What a great job to political presentation coach. So on terms of the presentation, there's a gulf of difference between the optimism, the sort of patriotic fervour. Very different time, of course. We had a lot of money in the Tony Blair era, and yet before the election, Sir Keir Starmer even said he promised to relight the fire of optimism. Instead, I put it to you, Graham, the fire of optimism has been rained out by pessimism.
Instead of optimism, he seems to have changed the Labour Party theme tune to "The Only Way is Down." And judging by the bits of the speech that have been leaked to the media, the speech that he's performing tomorrow, it sounds as if he's going to be channeling Corporal Fraser from Dad's Army. Because of the evil Tories, we're all doomed unless I plan to raise taxes in a way that none of you are going to like. And even when he's at his most jolly, he has the public speaking style of a door-to-door undertaker. So I think that listening, and also, frankly, even if he was announcing that the NHS had found the key to eternal youth, he could still make it sound like very bad news indeed. So I'm not looking forward to the speech tomorrow in any way.
Do you think that this is a sign of things to come? And how long, in terms of political presentation, can you keep blaming the former government? The £22 billion black hole we heard about seems to be getting even bigger. £10 billion has been thrown into that for NHS and public sector pay rises, £500 million chucked in for junior doctors, £100 million for train drivers. In terms of presentation, how does it tally with being told we must tighten our belts, especially pensioners, but then, oh, hello, I've just found a few extra spare billion down the back of the Downing Street sofa for my mates in the unions. It's not good presentation or indeed consistency, is it?
Well, the weight with which he is pressing the blame button is a remarkable piece of presentational decision-making, because partly, again, looking forward to that speech, it looks as if he's partly still making the arguments of the general election. But more than that, instead of doing that, it's as if he is a prosecutor again, arguing a case when in the Crown Court, when the Tory party are in the dock. And despite the fact that on the 4th of July, the jury found them guilty, I think he's building up presentationally to psyching up the country to feel that it's them that are going to be punished with some very painful discipline.
And do you think that's part of the issue? Like Sir Keir Starmer seems to be very binary in his approach. It's black or white, it's right or wrong, it's guilty or innocent. But what the public actually wants, especially at the moment, is a bit more nuance, a bit more TLC.
Well, he's tried to do TLC sometimes when he was leader of the opposition in that slightly gentle tone, which he tried sometimes in his more calm questions. But it sounded very false indeed. When you've been a prosecuting barrister, and I was one myself for far too long, for as long as he has been, shock and awe is the way to go. Touchy, cuddly-feely, it's very difficult to turn on and sound authentic.
So if you're going to advise him, Graham, if you're going to advise him how to present himself, if you're going to coach him, what would you say?
Well, I would actually advise him that somehow he needs to get away from us feeling that he is reading out a pre-prepared script.
Yeah.
Now, of course, politicians really do have to read a pre-prepared script. They can't be spontaneously improvising all the time. But I would advise him to rehearse that script a bit more, to edit it a little bit more, so it sounds as if it's not just coming from his mouth, it's coming from his guts.
But also Rishi Sunak was the same. He felt like an auto-cue Prime Minister. Where have all of the great, orators gone, all of the great from the gut? Blair, whatever you think about his legacy, he was a great speaker. He had the presentation, he had the optimism, he had the intonation of delivery, which just seems to be missing from this generation.
Great oratory has been snaffled up in the maw of social media. And I think politicians are increasingly thinking of very short sound bites rather than a continuous piece of oratory that will persuade any given audience, the one in front of them or the one at home. And I think that tendency to do short, sharp, but not particularly glittering will continue.
Super. So thanks very much for joining us in the studio here, Graham Davis and, of course, Adam Sherry. Great start to the show. Thank you. Now, moving on now, let's return to the breaking news from earlier this afternoon. And the Prince of Wales and the Prime Minister are leading tributes to the former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who has sadly died from pancreatic cancer at the age of 76. Prince William praised his charisma and passion for the game, while Sir Keir Starmer has credited and thanked him for a tremendous contribution to English football and for the joy he brought to the nation. Now, the Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001, also managing a series of high-profile clubs such as Manchester City, Benfica, Roma and Fiorentina. Well, joining us now is Martin Bauer from the music duo Bell and Sperling, who released the classic single Sven, Sven, Sven. Welcome to the show, Martin. Always an absolute pleasure. Look, I worked in the tabloids when Sven was the gaffer. Nobody had a bad word to say about him. He was much loved. He taught all of us, I think, to drop the jingoism, embrace the continent. And as well as being an international football manager, he was an international playboy. What wasn't to like?
Do you know what? It is a real sad day. We were really lucky because we spent, a bit of time with him. We'd done quite a few events with him over the years, and it was really sad to get that news this morning. And I actually sent him a message on Thursday, a long message, just thanking him for what he'd done for us, really, for 20 years. Writing a song about Sven changed our lives, and we you know, we've been performing it every 2 years for the Euros and Golden Balls, and with the World Cup, we'd do Sven, and then we'd do Golden Balls, and really all the fans only ever wanted to hear the Sven song. That was the one that, you know, the phones would come out and sort of everyone would sing the lyrics. And I just sent him a long message just sort of saying thanks and what a great fella he was. Every time we met him, he was so nice to us, you know.
You know, and Martin, actually, that should be our cue. Let's enjoy a quick blast of Sven, Sven, Sven now.
Sven, 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 Goran Eriksson. He tried so many players for the Holland game. Yeah, how do you forget Collymore? The stay is insane.
See, I'm smiling out loud, and the guests that are with me in the studio here are laughing out loud, and I think that's a wonderful thing. That is what, actually, Sven would have wanted. That's how he'd like to be remembered. Of course, like Sven had prepared us for his death with great dignity and great acceptance. He knew that his time was going to come. In fact, ever the tactician, Martin, he more or less predicted the date he was going to die. Exactly. He knew his prognosis. He faced reality face on. He was very, very accepting, very, very warm and generous until the end. But tell us a bit more about the Sven that you remember and, you know, how gracious he was to you.
We'd done a few events, and we'd written the song originally for Talk Sport. And then we rewrote it when we beat the Germans 5-1, which was just one of the greatest times ever. And really, I think we were doing some small event, and then 6 weeks later, we were on Top of the Pops singing the Sven-Goran Eriksson song. And so then we met him on a few occasions, and every time we'd turn up, he'd say, "Hello, boys, still making money off my name, are you?" But we'd have a laugh about it, you know. He was genuinely so nice to us. And then the last event we did with him was in 2018. And we commented about how well he looked. You know, he looked so smart. He had a fantastic suit on. He looked amazing. And we had such a good afternoon doing this event with him. And we spoke about it. We said, "Oh, look, we'll probably see you in a couple of years' time. We'll see you at the next, you know, the next Euros or the next World Cup." And we never got a chance really to see him since 2018. And that was one of the reasons why I think we sent him this long message this week, just sort of purely saying thanks for what he did for us. I mean, he literally changed our lives, you know.
And, you know, Martin, there are so many people that supported England all their lives, like myself, who always felt that the gaffer should be English. And Sven came in and he had a tough gig. He had to convince people that was, you know, outdated thinking. And he did it so easily. And he did it so easily because he was so personable. I remember, like, thinking, how can you dislike this guy? Now, whatever he said, it felt considered, it felt erudite, it felt like what we weren't used to. And in many senses, Martin, I think he helped to re-educate England fans and to help us to move on from, you know, that kind of, you know, it's all about World War II, you know, that kind of old thing of what it was like to be an England fan. I'm sorry to be, but, you know, it just made the game move on in a way that I think was, I don't like this word, but inclusive.
Yeah, I think it probably went well for him, the fact that we beat the Germans 5-1, you know. It was
absolutely.
It was a decent start.
He's forever a legend at that point.
Exactly. He was like God to everyone, you know. So and it was like somebody mentioned it to me. I mean, the phone's been ringing a lot this morning, and it was like Sven mania. And it has been for us, doing this every 2 years, doing that song. You know, Sven, he's a lovely geezer. Don't forget that he's from Sweden. And really, everybody that I know that knows him from the football world, the England players that played for him at the time, that a couple of them were friends of ours, all of them have said, there's nothing bad you could say about him. He was just a very, very nice man. And it is a really sad day.
I totally agree, and I can see you're emotional there. But no, he said, I covered this story yesterday on Breakfast, and he was looking ahead to his own inevitable fate, and he said, "Don't be unhappy for me." He said, "Smile, I have lived a wonderful life." You know, that is what he said when he was staring death in the face like that, Martin. So philosophical and so pragmatic, and I think that's the Sven that we'll all remember.
I think I've only seen a few clips of the documentary that's just come out, and there is a clip of him sitting in his chair watching the Sven video, watching the song and laughing. And then I think David Beckham comes on and says how much he loved it. And, you know, I'm getting choked up talking about it now, but it's quite a point, that one.
Well, Martin Bell, thank you so much for sharing those memories with us. And thanks for making us smile. And I'm sure, you know, the fella up there will be having a little snigger himself looking down, because that's the way he would like us to enjoy today. Thank you very much, Martin Bell. Absolute pleasure from Bell and Sperling, of course. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Thank you. And lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including the suspect of the recent stabbing in Germany is a Syrian asylum seeker. Now, might this fuel the rise of the right in forthcoming elections? I'll speak to a German political expert soon.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Fatima's UK campaign. Children and young people matter, because I actually run a campaign, and my ministry today is about looking after children in the care system and improving their life outcomes. You know, for me, I had a difficult start to my childhood, and I will never forget it. I mean, I always say I may have left the care system, but the care system hasn't left me. And I instantly understand the importance of giving our young children and young people the opportunity to also, you know, have good life outcomes. So Fatima's UK campaign is all about that. And it's a summit next year. Eamon, I hope you're going to come.
No, and we've talked about this before, and certainly, I mean, I believe in what you're doing. I think it's marvellous what you're doing, and that's why, you know, when you think about children, and children are so close to you, and you look at that horror that happened in Southport yesterday, I mean, things like that
exactly.
will really hit home hard.
Well, children are the innocent ones, aren't they, Eamon? And this is what we look at when you think they're the future. We've got to start to put them back at the top. And it's a travesty when we see things like that, you know, Omar, that happen. You know, children are the ones that are impacted. And, you know, it's, for me, you know, really important to be able to do the best we can and looking after their future. And so hopefully, you know, I'm going to the Pyrenees in September, Eamon. That's my next challenge, the Bay of Biscay, from France to Spain and back. And hopefully people can go online, fatimascampaign.com, and give generously to help make a difference to these young people's lives. Because, as I say, children are the future.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:26. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. The suspect held over the festival terror attack in Germany that killed 3 people on Friday night has been charged. Syrian national Issa al-H was named as the man accused of carrying out a savage knife attack in the city of Solingen, which left a woman and 2 men dead. And how will this stabbing affect politics in Germany? Might it fuel the rise of right-wing parties in coming elections? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the editor-in-chief of NIUS, Julian Reichelt. Julian, welcome to the show. So, the political fallout from this tragic event, and by the way, we've seen an increasingly large number of such attacks, seemingly in Germany. We saw a police officer killed recently in another attack. They seem to be becoming alarmingly regular. And will it affect politics. We have big elections, I believe, coming up this Friday, state elections. What might this event and the continued backdrop of Islamist terror attacks in Germany mean for the political future of Germany?
So you're absolutely right. This has become a sad regular in German life. You know, these kind of attacks usually carried out with a knife, usually with a person that came to Germany illegally, that crossed into Germany illegally, but was never deported, has been here for a long time. As in this case, this person came to Germany in 2022 through Bulgaria. He was registered as an asylum seeker in Bulgaria, so it would have been possible to deport him straight away back to Bulgaria. But the police, unfortunately, only rang his doorbell once. He didn't open. So by not opening the door, he actually earned the right under absurd German law to stay in Germany. He got his title to stay here and then radicalized, apparently, was hired by ISIS and carried out this attack in Solingen. And this has happened time and again in Germany or in the past years, these kind of attacks. And you're right, we have two big regional elections coming up in Saxony and in Thuringia. In both states, the right-wing AfD is already in the lead. In Thuringia, very well in the lead. In Saxony, it's kind of a close race. And I suppose that, you know, this attack will just consolidate their lead in those two states. And it will, you know, over time trigger a huge disruption of the German party establishment. Because what will happen, and this is very important to understand, in both states, in Saxony and in Thuringia, most likely the AfD, the, you know, far-right party, will win. But all parties have sworn that they will not allow them to govern, that they will form coalitions against them and prevent them from governing. All other parties have sworn that. So people will, you know, get the impression that you have a major coalition by establishment parties against, not against the party, but against the one topic that is most emotional and feels most threatening to them. So people will, you know, not understand this as a message directed against the party. They will understand it as a message by the establishment parties against them. Your most emotional topic, the thing you care most about, illegal migration, will not be touched. It will not be changed. That's what, you know, people will interpret it at, and that will have major implications a year from now when we have general elections in Germany. You know, to the whole party system, I suppose, and I would say.
And Julian, in that respect, that's a lot of sentiment you're mentioning there that's echoed over in the United Kingdom as well. People have grave concerns about this, but when they speak out, they're branded racist, they're branded fascists, of course, a word which has a huge significance in Germany. Is that kind of critique, that kind of rhetoric still applied to people who are rightly very, very concerned about these kind of knife attacks and illegal immigration? And if so, is that still continuing to work? Or are other people saying, you know, enough is enough? We want to be heard. We want to support a free and safe and secure Germany.
What you're describing there, and I have followed what has been going on in the UK, people standing up, people saying we've had enough, and the enormous repercussions, you know, they have to fear for that. Something very similar going on here in Germany. The, you know, public media that is sponsored, force-sponsored in Germany with 10 billion euros per day that we have to pay for them, no matter if we watch them or not, no matter if we like them or not, no matter if we despise them or not, they are in full propaganda mode. You know, their world is collapsing in front of their eyes. They have sold migration as the solution to all the German, you know, those people will pay for our pensions. It's the doctors and the engineers of tomorrow. It's all collapsing. You know, everyone can see now that it's unskilled people migrating into the German welfare system, and many very dangerous people with them. So it's not that a single lie is collapsing. A whole world, they have told us for years, is collapsing in front of their eyes. And they are absolutely determined to defend, you know, the lie they've told and sold us. So, you know, they're going in full propaganda mode. They're saying, you know, don't focus on the Islamism now. We should, you know, now debate the length of a knife you can carry with you. Is it 8 centimeters? Is it 6 centimeters? You know, they're trying to make this a debate about knives and not about Islamism coming into this country. They are framing everyone, who's criticizing this policy with all the words we've heard so many times. But to your last question, people are not having it anymore. People have now understand that. They've heard it enough. And I think they will show at the polls.
That's excellent. Thank you. Great analysis. Please come back on the show. And that's Julian Reichelt, the editor-in-chief of NIUS there over in Germany. Now, it's the second day of the Notting Hill Carnival, and there were 3 stabbings yesterday. But does it get a bad reputation, and deservedly, or is it time to ditch Notting Hill? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. But first is your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories this hour. Former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson has died at the age of 76. The Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001. Sven also managed a series of high-profile clubs such as Manchester City, Benfica, Roma and Fiorentina. Eriksson had pancreatic cancer and at the beginning of 2024 revealed he only had a year to live at best. Well, following his death, the Prime Minister has paid tribute to him, saying he was deeply saddened by his passing. He went on to say he'll be remembered for his tremendous contribution to English football, which brought joy to so many people over the years. Prince William's also paid his respects on X, saying, "I met him several times and was always struck by his charisma and passion for the game." He said, "My thoughts are with his family and friends, a true gentleman of the game." In other news, a British man killed by a missile strike in eastern Ukraine has been named as safety advisor Ryan Evans. The 38-year-old was part of a reporting crew working with the news agency Reuters when the hotel they were staying at in Kramatorsk was struck on Saturday. The agency says they're devastated by his death and they're now urgently seeking more information about the attack. The strike also put 2 other journalists in hospital. One is in a serious condition. And a senior Metropolitan Police officer says he's tired of saying the same words every year. That's after a woman attending the Notting Hill Carnival with her child was stabbed. 3 people were stabbed yesterday at the annual event. The 32-year-old mother is in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on the first day. A heavy police presence is now expected for the main parade today as it passes through the streets of West London. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, if you want to get in touch with me here at GB News, you know what to do. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay, and I'll read out a better few messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It's a bit of a northwest-southeast split over the next 24 hours. Wet and windy weather moving in from the Atlantic, but temperatures rising in the sunshine towards the southeast. High pressure here, keeping it largely settled, but low pressure moving in from the Atlantic will bring some wet and windy weather across northern and western areas for the next few days. Across the UK for Monday evening, plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, however turning wetter and windier across Northern Ireland into Scotland as this next weather system moves in. The rain turning heavy as we head into the early hours. A Met Office rain warning coming into force by the end of the night. Southerly winds picking up too, drawing in some warm air, temperatures largely staying in double figures. So it's a wet start to the day on Tuesday across Scotland with outbreaks of heavy rain. There could be some local disruption, particularly across western and southern areas. We've seen quite a lot of rain here over recent weeks. Some tricky travelling conditions with the heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, temperatures in the mid-teens. Rain starting to clear Northern Ireland, some heavy bursts possible. And that rain also extending into northern England, western fringes of Wales and later the West Country. But much of England and Wales starting the day dry with plenty of sunshine. As we head through the day, this weather front just slowly pushes a little further south and eastwards, clearing Northern Ireland, brightening skies here. A few showers also for northern and western parts of Scotland, but the rain remains across southern Scotland, northern England, Wales, down into the West Country. Here quite cool and breezy. To the southeast of this, warm and sunny, temperatures reaching 25, 26 Celsius. Fresher behind it, temperatures generally the high teens. Through into the evening time on Tuesday, this weather front just stalls and stays across parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, northern England. Further heavy bursts possible. And then over the next few days, well, temperatures peak on Wednesday around 29 Celsius and then cooling as we end the week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Samantha Dean. In Cumbria, the M6 northbound long delays due to an obstruction on the road from junction 39 at Shap to 40 at Penrith. In Northamptonshire, the M1 southbound, one lane's closed, slow traffic due to a broken down vehicle from 16 Daventry to 15A at Towcester. In Bedfordshire, the M1 southbound's queuing due to an earlier accident at 11A at Dunstable Northern Bypass. In Berkshire, the M4 eastbound slow, a lane closed on the entry slip road due to a broken down vehicle at junction 12 at Thiel. And in Hampshire, the M3 southbound severe delays, queuing traffic due to an earlier accident from junction 11 Winchester South to 12 at Eastleigh, congestion to junction 9 at Winchester North.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:39. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, it's the second day of the Notting Hill Carnival, and more than 1 million people are expected to descend on West London today to take part in cultural celebrations full of vibrant colours and music, as you can see on your screen there. But every year it seems to be plagued by crime. 3 people were stabbed yesterday, with one now in a life-threatening condition. And so far, police have made over 90 arrests, and there have been 10 assaults already on police officers. Joining me now to discuss this is the former Detective Superintendent at the Metropolitan Police, Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, always a pleasure to have you on the show. And we have this conversation, do we not, every single year. A lot of people say that Notting Hill Carnival is a part of London's rich cultural tapestry, brings in £300 million in revenue estimated per year, yet it does seem to be disproportionately plagued by violent crime, especially now, it seems, knife crime. Is it time to ditch Notting Hill?
Absolutely not, Martin. And as you say, it's a beautiful, vibrant cultural event that we've had now for decades, celebrated particularly by the Caribbean community to celebrate their roots here in the United Kingdom. Of course, there is trouble there most years. That goes without saying. There are always a small pocket, a minority of those that attend deliberately to cause trouble amongst themselves. There will be those that will go there with the intent of causing trouble amongst perhaps other individuals that they've got a gripe with. Absolutely awful to hear about this woman, the 32-year-old who's suffered life-threatening injuries. Let's hope she fully recovers, and let's also hope that those responsible are brought to justice. But what I would say is this, that those events, in the vast majority, the main are peaceful events. You will see a huge amount of vibrancy, which is playing out on your screens right now. And unfortunately, the media will play out that it is in the main violent and plagued by violence yourselves, as you just said. But actually, that's a small percentage. If you compare that to the Leeds Festival last year, which had 100,000 revellers that attended those events, there were 78 arrests, which actually the proportion of that compared to Notting Hill Carnivals is actually somewhat bigger.
Yeah, but Shabnam, when you look at the types of arrests, nobody's getting stabbed at the Leeds Festival. Nobody's getting stabbed at Glastonbury. No one's getting stabbed at Wembley Stadium, where there are a comparable number of arrests, but for things like ticket touting or soft drug possession, the types of arrests tend to be typically quite different. And so you say there's a two-tiered aspect to this. One of our next guests, Mike Neville, he was a former Scotland Yard detective. He's coming on later in the show. He wrote a piece a few days ago saying that Notting Hill, you may have seen it, benefits from two-tiered policing because the police officers typically stand off and let things carry on in a way, for example, that would not be allowed to happen if it were, say, at a Millwall match. If a man was dancing in a sexually provocative manner to a WPC there, he'd get short shift, he'd be nicked within moments. Do you not think that the arrests are quite low at Notting Hill because the police stand off?
No, I don't think the arrests are quite low. And actually, Martin, if you look at policing of football events and football events itself, during the England matches, there's an increase of domestic violence by 26% when England draw a match. And then when you have a defeat,
that might happen after Notting Hill.
It might happen after Notting Hill, but I'm talking about football. I'm just giving you a comparison. A 38% increase in when England are defeated. Does that mean that we should then stop football events? There are missiles thrown at police officers. There is abuse. There are drunks. There is football hooliganism. So that plays out across the field. 2 million revellers go to the Notting Hill Carnival roughly most years. It's the second largest carnival in the world after the Rio Carnival. It has a huge benefit to local businesses and those businesses that work hard all year round preparing. The police work very hard and closely with the organisers. The only time that they will ban these events will be if there is significant information and intelligence that there is a likelihood of serious violence about to occur or will occur, then the police will have to reconsider those carnivals. So no, I don't think it should be banned. It's a family event. It's awful that there is some violence there. Police actually manage it very well. And I think also the engagement aspect of policing is crucially important, particularly when you look at trust and confidence amongst communities, particularly the Black and the minority communities who are disadvantaged time and time again, such as stop and search, tasering, handcuffing of those individuals and the arrest of many. But let's hope tonight is a peaceful event and that the end of Carnival is a good one and that there are few arrests.
Totally agree. Let's hope it is peaceful, as indeed last night's events were described as mostly peaceful. Thanks for your opinions. Always a pleasure. Former Detective Superintendent at the Met, Shebnan Chowdhury. Thank you very much. Now, today is going to be the day that Oasis reunite. Is it? It actually could be tomorrow. More on that next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's have a look at this story in the Telegraph, Charlie. And this is about Anglican Church, the Church of England, dropping the word church in favour of something a bit more modern sounding. Words such as community. Why are we afraid of the word church?
Well, that's my question. I mean, you've got to assume that they think it solves some kind of problem. But I think, there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about their particular religious institution, whatever they all have different names, don't they? And if you rename one, do you have to rename all of them? Can we no longer use an individual name for different religions, community buildings?
Are you religious?
I'm spiritual.
You sound like him. Yeah.
No, certainly.
Don't get Ellie started on me.
Do I believe in a God? Yes. Do I believe in any of the particular gods that are offered to us? Still undecided.
I'm like you. I said exactly that.
You two are the same. You two are exactly.
What about you, Anna? Are you particularly religious?
Well, I'm not a proper religious. I won't name myself as a religious, but I really do respect religions. And we have bigger problems to think about.
Is it a sign of where we're at in this secular society?
Yes.
We're moving more and more towards that. The Anglican Church feels that the only way to be relevant is to take away any reference to church going, to being religious.
I think if the substance of what you're offering is good, it doesn't matter what it's called. So if people are going to find solace and peace in a place that makes them feel better, they're not going to care too much about what it's called. So I think relabeling it, rebranding it, I don't know, maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, but it's going to certainly upset a lot of people, I should think.
And people whose religion is important to them and kind of central to their lives, you can imagine.
Absolutely.
There's a reason Justin Welby is nicknamed by some quarters the Archbishop of Woke. Maybe this adds fuel to the fire, who knows?
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:48. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. Now, the Prince of Wales and the Prime Minister are leading those tributes to former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who has sadly died from pancreatic cancer at the age of 76. Our reporter Sophie Reaper has been taking a look at his colourful and magnificent life.
Sweet moments like this are what Sven-Göran Eriksson will be remembered by. A legend of the game, hailed as one of Europe's best managers during his time. He gave England fans moments they'll never forget.
We're not going home! We're not going home!
For 5 years, he managed the England national team, leading the golden generation, including the likes of Steven Gerrard, David Beckham and Michael Owen, just to name a few. In 67 games, he won 40 and lost 10. He was far from a flop. While his tactical approach was described as pragmatic, it was a key ingredient to his success, which landed him jobs managing some of the biggest footballing superstars in the world. Former England and Manchester City right-back Danny Mills was given his international debut by Sven, including a World Cup cap in 2002. He says Sven brought something different that other managers didn't have.
I don't remember Sven ever raising his voice, let alone shouting. He was very much in the Arsene Wenger mould of management, spoke very, very softly. His football knowledge was absolutely incredible, worked with some of the top clubs in the world, a lot of the top players as well. Spoke, I would say, fluently 5 languages, probably spoke 7 or 8.
Away from international football, he managed a number of clubs, mainly across Europe. There, he won 5 league titles among many domestic cups. While his style may not have been to everyone's taste, his character and treatment of players is something he'll always be admired for. And now, his death has sent ripples of sorrow across the sporting world. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Absolute legend. Now, GBNews reporter Jack Carson joins us now from one of Sven's former clubs, Manchester City. Jack, welcome to the show. And, of course, very, very fondly remembered there amongst the Sky Blues. And, indeed, they've been leading the tributes to the former England great. Tell us more.
Yeah, definitely, Martin. Well, here at the Etihad Stadium, Manchester City confirming that they're going to lower the flags here to half-mast in memory of Sven-Göran Eriksson. Now, he became manager after that spell as England boss in the summer of 2007. It was the start of a lot of the arrivals of City's continental talent as they started to make waves and rises up the table in the Premier League. He took over from Stuart Pearce, overseeing that change, becoming the first manager in 38 years to lead City to a double over Manchester United. So there are really fond memories of him, certainly at this club, being able to beat their local rivals twice in the season. He led them to 9th in the Premier League that season and left shortly afterwards, and to go on to manage in the likes of Mexico, the Philippines, across the world. I mean, I've spoken to a fan from Norway here today who's been visiting the stadium. He's part of the Norway Supporters Trust. Obviously, they sit right next door to Sweden. He was telling me, described Sven as a gentleman. That's also how Prince William, in a post on X today, also described him. In that statement, Prince William said that he was sad to hear about the passing of Sven-Göran Eriksson, talking about how he met him several times as England manager. Was always struck, he says, by his charisma and passion for the game and his thoughts with his friends and family, and calling him a gentleman of the game. So that's very much the reflection that I'm getting from being here, that lots of people viewed Sven as a gentleman. You were hearing there and Sophie Reaper's reports and Danny Mills talking about how cool and calm maybe he was, not necessarily someone who would raise his voice at players as a manager. And he coached all around the world, all different kinds of levels, international management, winning European trophies, multiple of them, 18 trophies he won across his career. He will be fondly remembered, particularly here at the Etihad, for that spell in charge here, becoming one of their first foreign managers as well. He only revealed at the start of this year he'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, of course, and was very open about how he believed he only had about a year or two left to live at best. But just a few days ago there was a documentary titled Sven that was released, and he gave his own goodbye in that message, talking about how we're all scared of the day that we die, he says, but life is about death as well. He says he hope you remember me as a positive guy. Don't be sorry, smile.
Superb message and a superb way to be remembered. Every single club he's ever touched has got a great message and a memory of him. Thank you very much there, Jack Colson, outside the Etihad. We'll cross back to you later in the show. Now, things are going to get worse. That's our Prime Minister's less than optimistic message coming out. Do you feel that when Sir Keir Starmer said it's time for a return to positive politics before the general election, there's been another dramatic U-turn? In a speech due tomorrow, apparently, we're about to be told things can only get bitter, not things can only get better. What a U-turn. That's all coming. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel. But now it's your weather with Greg Dewhurst.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It's a bit of a northwest-southeast split over the next 24 hours. Wet and windy weather moving in from the Atlantic, but temperatures rising in the sunshine towards the southeast. High pressure here, keeping it largely settled, but low pressure moving in from the Atlantic will bring some wet and windy weather across northern and western areas for the next few days. Across the UK for Monday evening, plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, however turning wetter and windier across Northern Ireland into Scotland as this next weather system moves in. The rain turning heavy as we head into the early hours. A Met Office rain warning coming into force by the end of the night. Southerly winds picking up too, drawing in some warm air, temperatures largely staying in double figures. So it's a wet start to the day on Tuesday across Scotland with outbreaks of heavy rain. There could be some local disruption, particularly across western and southern areas. We've seen quite a lot of rain here over recent weeks. Some tricky travelling conditions with the heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, temperatures in the mid-teens. Rain starting to clear Northern Ireland, some heavy bursts possible. And that rain also extending into northern England, western fringes of Wales and later the West Country. But much of England and Wales starting the day dry with plenty of sunshine. As we head through the day, this weather front just slowly pushes a little further south and eastwards, clearing Northern Ireland, brightening skies here. A few showers also for northern and western parts of Scotland, but the rain remains across southern Scotland, northern England, Wales, down into the West Country. Here quite cool and breezy. To the southeast of this, warm and sunny, temperatures reaching 25, 26 Celsius. Fresher behind it, temperatures generally the high teens. Through into the evening time on Tuesday, this weather front just stalls and stays across parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, northern England. Further heavy bursts possible. And then over the next few days, well, temperatures peak on Wednesday around 29 Celsius and then cooling as we end the week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Samantha Dean. In Cheshire, the M6 southbound, 2 lanes are closed, queuing traffic due to an accident before junction 18 at Middlewich Holmes Chapel. In the West Midlands, the M42 northbound's queuing due to an earlier accident between junction 4 at Shirley and junction 5, the Solihull bypass. Congestion to 3A at the M40 interchange. In Northamptonshire, the M1 southbound, 1 lane's closed. Slow traffic due to a broken down vehicle from 16 at Daventry to 15A at Toaster. In Bristol, the M5 at Somerset, slow traffic due to an incident from 19 at Portishead to 20 at Clevedon. And in West Sussex, the M23 northbound partially blocked due to an overturned car at 10 at Crawley.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you on this Monday. It's exactly 4 o'clock. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, much-loved former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson has passed away, sadly, aged 76, following a brave battle with pancreatic cancer. We'll pay tribute to the international manager, the international playboy and the legend who forever gave England fans that miracle, precious 5-1 Mullering of Germany in Munich. And before the general election, Sir Keir Starmer promised to relight the fire of optimism. But tomorrow, he'll tell us things will only get worse before they get any better. Forget Blair's things will only get better. Now it seems things will only get bitter for beleaguered British voters. And there were over 90 arrests, 3 stabbings and 15 police officers assaulted on the opening day, family day, of the Notting Hill Carnival yesterday. Critics say it's dangerous, but fans claim it brings in over £300 million annually to the London economy. I'll shortly speak to a police officer who thinks it's time to ditch the Notting Hill Carnival. And one of Britain's most iconic groups, Oasis, look definitely maybe set to announce that big comeback tour tomorrow morning. So get your champagne supernova on the chill. All that coming up in the next hour. Welcome to the show. Always a delight to have your company. In the break there, I was just watching highlights of that 5-1 victory in Munich by England. It's still is enough to make me almost weep. All these years later, what a magnificent way of remembering Sven-Göran Eriksson. That was only his first year as the gaffer in 2000, when he joined in 2000, of course. And what a memory to kick off. We're speaking to the former Director of Communications at the FA, Shorty, who was there during those wonder years when Sven really was in his pomp. Send your views in and your comments, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now it's your headlines, and it's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories. Former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson has died at the age of 76. The Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001. Sven also managed a series of high-profile clubs such as Manchester City, Benfica, Roma and Fiorentina. Eriksson had pancreatic cancer and at the beginning of this year revealed he only had a year to live at best. Following his death, the Prime Minister has paid tribute, saying he was deeply saddened by his passing. He went on to say he'll be remembered for his tremendous contribution to English football, which brought joy to so many people over the years. And Prince William's also paid his respects on X, saying, "I met him several times and was always struck by his charisma and passion for the game. My thoughts are with his family and friends, a true gentleman of the game." Well, former England player Danny Mills told GB News this afternoon he was one of a kind.
I don't remember Sven ever raising his voice, let alone shouting. He was very much in the Arsene Wenger mould of management, spoke very, very softly. His football knowledge was absolutely incredible.
In other news now, everyone has been accounted for after a major incident was declared following the breakout of a fire overnight at a block of flats in Dagenham. Over 100 people were evacuated from the building, with 2 people being taken to hospital. London Fire Commissioner Andy Rowe says a full investigation into the fire and its cause will now get underway. He says there will undoubtedly be concerns around the fire safety issues present within the building, and this will form part of our report. A British man killed by a missile strike in eastern Ukraine has been named as safety advisor Ryan Evans. The 38-year-old was part of a reporting crew working with the news agency Reuters when the hotel they were staying at in Kramatorsk was struck on Saturday. The agency says they're devastated by his death and they're now urgently seeking more information about the attack. The strike also put 2 other journalists in hospital. One remains in a serious condition. This morning, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz laid flowers at a memorial site where 3 people were killed and 8 injured in a stabbing on Friday. The 26-year-old behind the attack in Western Germany has been named as Issa al-H. That was after he gave himself up to the police. The Syrian national is now being investigated by German federal prosecutors for links to the Islamic State terror group. Italian prosecutors have placed the captain of the super yacht, which sank off the coast of Sicily last week, under investigation. It's been reported that James Cutfield, a 51-year-old New Zealand national, is being investigated for manslaughter and shipwreck. The vessel's sinking led to the deaths of British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, his daughter Hannah, and 5 others. A senior Metropolitan Police officer says he's tired of saying the same words every year after a woman attending the Notting Hill Carnival with her child was stabbed. 3 people were stabbed yesterday at the annual event. The 32-year-old mother is in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on the first day of the event. A heavy police presence is now in place today for the main parade as it passes through the streets of West London. In the Middle East, tensions have escalated between Israel and Hezbollah after an exchange of fire on both sides. The Israeli military carried out a series of airstrikes in southern Lebanon early yesterday morning, saying it believed Hezbollah was planning to carry out an attack of its own. The Iran-backed militants then launched drones at Israel, allegedly in response to the killing of one of its top commanders in an airstrike in Beirut last month. In response to this, British Foreign Secretary David Lammy has urged restraints on both sides. Back home, the NHS hospital discharge system has been described by the government as broken. A new survey's revealed almost a fifth of UK care providers reported week-long waiting times for people to be transferred. 17% of respondents said that average length of time for a person to be discharged into their care was 1 to 2 weeks, while around 7% saying the average wait was 3 or more. And the world's oldest man turns 112 today. John Tinniswood was born in Liverpool on this day in 1912 and says the secret to his long life is just luck. Asked how he feels to be turning 112, he told Guinness World Records, in all honesty, no different. He said, I don't feel that age. I don't get excited over it. That's probably why I've reached it. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. The Prince of Wales and the Prime Minister have been leading tributes to former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who has sadly died from pancreatic cancer at the age of 76. Prince William praised his charisma and passion for the game, while Sir Keir Starmer has thanked him for a tremendous contribution to English football and for the joy he brought to millions across the nation. Well, let's discuss Sven's legacy now with the former Director of Comms at the FA, Paul Newman. Paul, welcome to the show. A sad day, but one that we knew was coming. In fact, Sven himself knew was coming and bravely faced death in the mirror. But let's talk before that, if we can, about happier days, which surely must be one of the most magnificent nights of your life. I wasn't even there. One of the most magnificent nights of my life, that 5-1 in Munich, September the 1st, 2001. Sven was the manager. You were working at the FA then. What a night. I just watched a clip of it a short minute ago, and it still is enough to bring grown men close to tears. Tell us your special memories of being there and of being with Sven.
Well, good afternoon, Martin. Yes, I mean, I think I'll come to that in a moment, if I may. I mean, the first thing I need to say, and I want to say, is to, of course, pass on my condolences to Sven's family. What is obviously a very difficult time, no matter how much he talked about it, as you rightly observed. I think it's an immensely sad day, and I know, speaking to a couple of my former colleagues, that we all feel the same way, that it's a very sad day. But we also, when we reflect on Sven, and I think this is a fair comment, do so with a smile, because this was a man of great consideration, a man of great humility, a man who, above all else, in whatever situation, remained unfailingly polite. And I think not everybody in life can achieve that, never mind in sport. And I think that's one of the great things I'll remember about Sven, his calmness, his ability to be kind to others, to think of other people rather than himself, was a measure of the man. And I think the outpouring that you've seen on social media with the statements from various people across the world, including football players, managers, associations, and all the rest of it, it really shows that genuine affection, love and respect for Sven-Göran Eriksson. Now, when it comes to the match that you're referring to, that historic game, as you describe it, in Munich, I think, for me, the most important aspect to that night was the way Sven handled himself after the match, because it's extremely tempting to get involved in triumphalism after a result of that nature. And the thing about Sven was that he was always extremely measured, whether win, lose or draw. And I think that's very difficult to achieve in an international sporting context, or any sporting context, or any life context, to be honest. Now, during that match, unbeknownst to a lot of people during the game, Rudi Völler, the German coach, his father had had a heart attack during the match. So straight after the game, Sven, instead of wanting to talk to the media, talk to live television, talk to journalists, his primary concern was, where is Rudi Völler? I need to speak to Rudi about his father. And that sums up Sven-Göran Eriksson's approach to other human beings. So yes, he's won a football match. He's been the leader of a team that's pulled off an extraordinary result. But what mattered to him was the personal touch and the impact on Rudi Völler and the Germany team as a whole. So yes, fantastic result. We can talk about that a little bit more in detail, but just to recall Sven's approach, to me sums up the man as well as the football coach.
And Paul, I worked in the newspaper industry in the time when Sven first became the England manager, and what strikes me is that journalists and indeed every club that Sven went to, people don't seem to have a bad word to say about him. There's just fondness across the board, irrespective of all of those clubs across all of those 5 decades. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, that humility, that kindness, and in particular, I think, Paul, for England fans, a lot of us died in the world that an England manager must be English, and Sven came to us and he moved the game on, he moved our mindset on, he helped us to embrace a more modern way of thinking about football. In that sense, a true agent of change.
Absolutely. I think Sven was a very charming man, a great ability to empathise with people, particularly football fans. People would stop him in the streets all the time and just want to chat about football. So it didn't really matter whether you'd met him for 5 seconds or worked with him for several years. Your conclusion was always the same. You know, this is a great guy. He loves football, but more than that, he gives people time. And I think that's what fans loved about him. So I've got lots of friends who are big Manchester City fans, and he was loved at Manchester City, not just because he beat Manchester United twice, but also because he gave the fans time. And not everybody does that. And whether you're in business or whether you're in sport, the ability to do that and convey empathy with the people who effectively are supporting your business is everything. So it didn't matter whether he was in a restaurant, if he was disturbed and people wanted to get a selfie or get an autograph, he was more than happy to do that, because I think his view was very much the time to worry is when people are not asking for your autograph or not asking for a selfie. That sums up his approach. And I think that's why, as you say, you won't find anybody with a bad word to say about it, whether it's Portugal, Sweden, or Italy, or the UK.
Thank you for sharing those warm memories. Paul Newman, the former Director of Communications at the FA. Thank you for joining us on the topic, the sad death of Sven-Göran Eriksson. Thank you. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is set to announce that things will get worse before they get better. Now, I don't remember that in the manifesto, do you? The Prime Minister also faces cronyism allegations as major Labour Party donor Lord Wahid Ali was given a Downing Street security pass despite not having a formal job on the premises. Well, let's discuss that further now in the studio with GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, welcome to the show. So we're expecting a speech tomorrow from the Prime Minister in stark contrast to the early days of Tony Blair. Things going to get better, it seems. Things going to get much, much worse.
Yeah, what happened to this change message that we heard during the election? Change, as you say, for the much worse. So what this is I think, on the one hand, it's obviously warning the electorate that you're not going to don't expect any good news in the budget in October. Don't expect prison overcrowding to be fixed overnight. Also, I think it's kind of telling the party, his own MPs who are coming back from recess next week, brace yourselves for this because it's going to be tough for you lot as well. And you're going to have to get... This is actually your pitch to the voters when you meet them on the doorstep, that we need a long time to fix the mess from the previous guys. So, yeah, overcrowding in prisons, obviously the riots, tax rises, the winter fuel allowance being cut. All of that is coming down the track very quickly, and there's no sort of panacea. There's no sunlit uplands for a very long time. The reason they feel like they can get away with doing this now, or why it's politically important to do it now, is obviously because we only had an election, what was it, 2 months ago, if that, 6-7 weeks ago? So they're banking on enough goodwill by the time we get to an election in 5 years and saying, look, we've been through the mess, that was necessary, and now we can sort of have the giveaways and govern as we had intended all along. That kind of worked with the coalition, or rather with the Conservatives, in 2015. Remember, they were elected in 2010 and immediately had to introduce austerity, as its critics call it, but cuts to public services and so on as a necessary antidote to what had come before. And the public bought it. So there is precedent for it. The immediate problem with this cronyism thing is it's just not going away, and it's actually a problem of their own making in two senses. Of course, one, they appoint these people, which we'll discuss in a second, but also their central pitch was they are not sleazy, they're not going to hand out jobs for mates. the whole point of this change thing was that it's going to be different, and the public will say, well, hold on, this looks exactly the same. So you have Wahid Ali, who's wandering around Parliament, or excuse me, on Downing Street with a pass, even though he doesn't have a job, but he did send a lot of money to the right people, Prime Minister himself and the Labour Party over the last 20 years. You have Ian Caulfield, who was a chap who sent some money to Rachel Reeves and the Treasury and the party itself, going to the Treasury in a senior job as a civil servant, despite obvious connections to the party. That would undermine civil service impartiality. He's now stepped back from that and will now only have an unpaid role. So there are a bunch of these examples. There are some more. But the point is, the Conservatives are going to jump on the hypocrisy element of this. Not just the fact that these appointments have been made, but they promised not to be like this, and we're only a month in, and it seems like the narrative is that they're falling into the same traps, basically.
OK, Adam Cherry, well, let's ask a former Conservative MP now if it is indeed their fault. I'm joined by Sir Michael Fabricant on the show. Sir Michael, always a pleasure. So we're expecting a big speech from Sir Keir Starmer tomorrow saying things are going to get much, much worse, and it's all because of the Conservative Party. It's your fault.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? And much of it is being made by him. I mean, they inherited, as you well know, I mean, a very powerful economy. It's the fastest growing economy in the G7. That means faster than the United States, where I've just returned from, faster than that in Germany or France or Japan. But why is it going so bad? And the answer's simple. Keir Starmer has caved in to the trade unions. Keir, the caver-inner, has given money to the rail unions and the other militant unions. And economists that I've spoken to have said this has set an awful precedent, because it won't be all over now. There'll be further demands. And his hopes, which was admirably expressed just now by your correspondent, that, all right, we'll do the difficult things in the first year. And you know what, fellow Labour MPs, don't worry, because the next 4 years after that will be grand before we have a general election. Oh, no, it won't. They've spotted the weakness in Keir Starmer, and the trade unions, who, after all, are the paymasters of Labour, they're going to be exacting their revenge and wanting more and more public payouts, which will lead to inflation and all the rest that we've seen in the past when Labour got elected in the 70s. Already the honeymoon has ended.
Yeah, the honeymoon period seems to be shorter than a honeymoon period in a wet weekend in Blackpool. What about cronyism? Because, of course, the Labour Party would always say, the Tory party were the party of jobs for the boys, jobs for the girls, backroom deals over PPE and all the rest of it. And now here we are, Lord Ali Wahid getting a pass for Downing Street, having given £500,000 directly to the Labour Party over the past 20 years. Is it always the same that in opposition you can say one thing and then it seems as soon as the party gets into power, they just do the opposite?
Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it? And we heard only just before the election, Keir Starmer tackling the Prime Minister then, Rishi Sunak, and saying, you're going to now cancel all the winter payments, aren't you, to pensioners? And yet what did he do? He did just that, Keir Starmer, as soon as he was in office. And you've seen it as well with the Chief of Staff of the Labour Party, Sue Gray, who was previously supposed to be a neutral civil servant, but in fact had very close ties, both directly herself and through her family, with the Labour Party. No, people are going to see through this very quickly. And I've even seen, driving between Heathrow and Lichfield this morning, a sticker in the back of at least one car saying, don't blame me, I voted Conservative. The Conservatives weren't perfect, far from it. Most governments who had to fight COVID and Russia over the Ukraine have been very unsuccessful when it comes to general elections because of all the unpopular decisions they had to make. But Labour have inherited a very, very strong economy. And they're just blowing it now. Keir Starmer, Keir, the caver-inner.
OK, so Michael Fabricant, you lost your seat at the last election, but you still seem to have your tail in the air very, very much on politics. You fancy a return to politics, Sir Michael, quickly?
I don't know. I did 32 years as a Member of Parliament, won 9 general elections. I think actually I should move on to something else.
I'm still thinking they all definitely may be interested. So, Michael Fabricant, always a pleasure to see you on the show. Thank you. You take care now. Still to come, I was speaking to the former copper who says that the Notting Hill Carnival is the ultimate example of two-tier policing. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry also revealed that he wouldn't bring his wife Meghan Markle back to the UK over safety concerns.
Let's talk to royal correspondent Michael Cole.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ellie. I mean, they live in California. I'm not sure what the murder rate is there, but that's a more dangerous place than Britain's at any time of the day. And of course, he compromised his own safety when he said in his book, Spare, his autobiography, which was Ghost Britain, that he'd personally killed 25 Taliban when he was serving with the British Army in Afghanistan. Well, that painted a target for life on the back of himself and his family, which was a very unwise thing for him to do. The other thing which struck me, it was that he invoked the name of the late Queen, saying that he'd had several conversations with his grandmother, and she'd been very, very supportive in his battle. He sees himself, and it's a word he's used, as a dragon slayer against the popular press, the tabloid press, and he's continuing with that. Of course, his brother, Prince William, has settled, but also in the programme was Hugh Grant. Now, Hugh Grant also has settled, as indeed did I, when I received an apology from News Group. I believe in a free and unfettered press. Newspapers are having a bad time at the moment, losing circulation, losing advertising. Young people don't read newspapers. And so I felt that the right thing to do was to settle. I didn't want to take punitive action against newspapers.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:24. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. It's the second day of the Notting Hill Carnival. More than 1 million people are expected to descend on West London today to take part in cultural celebrations full of vibrant colours and music. But every year it seems to be plagued by crime. 3 people were stabbed yesterday on Family Day, with one in a life-threatening condition. And so far, police have made over 90 arrests. Now, earlier, I was joined by the former Metropolitan Police Detective, Superintendent Shabnam Chowdhury, who downplayed the levels of crime.
What I would say is this, that those events, in the vast majority, the main are peaceful events. You will see a huge amount of vibrancy, which is playing out on your screens right now. And unfortunately, the media will play out that it is in the main violent and plagued by violence yourselves, as you just said. But actually, that's a small percentage. If you compare that to the Leeds Festival last year, which had 100,000 revellers that attended those events, there were 78 arrests, which actually the proportion of that compared to Notting Hill Carnivals is actually somewhat bigger.
Well, joining now to discuss this is the retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville. Mike, you wrote an article ahead of the Notting Hill Carnival a couple of days ago for the Telegraph saying it's the ultimate example of two-tier policing. Explain to us what you meant by that.
Awesome. We just heard a lot of rubbish, haven't we? That there was less arrests or more arrests at Leeds. Well, depends on the different policing style. At Notting Hill Carnival, there's been, for the last 5 years, there's been an average of 10 stabbings every year. Now, if you look at football, for example, about 850,000 people go to football every weekend. That's comparable to what attends the Notting Hill Carnival. Can you imagine if there were 10 stabbings and 18 weapons recovered and loads of assaults on police during a weekend? Every weekend, we'd be told there was a return to hooliganism and the white working class were revolting, far right, etc., etc. And it just can't carry on, because what happens is you've really got to push the boat out at Notting Hill to get arrested. So when it says there's been that many arrests, if you applied the same criteria at a football match, there'd be thousands of arrests. So the challenge I have for anybody who claims there isn't two-tier policing is this. Go to Notting Hill and you can smoke drugs openly, you can abuse the police, shout at the police, police dogs even. You can dance with female officers to the point of indecent assault. And one officer was sexually assaulted last year. And then the experiment is you go to Millwall next Saturday and you do those things on the way to the ground and you'll be swiftly arrested and taken to the police station.
And Mike Neville, it's true to say that we have seen 90 arrests so far. Would you not accept that that is an example of the police clamping down? Or are you actually saying if they applied the same policing as they do down the Millwall, then there'll be far, far, far more arrests?
There'd be 900 arrests if they applied the same thing. But of course, operationally, those officers are in a real bad place. They're really crushed. They've got to be mindful if they do arrest somebody that it might cause a massive public order thing. So you can't blame the officers on the ground. There are some brave officers and there's some tired officers who really work hard. And it's one of the things a lot of officers really don't want to do. But it's also the scale of it. There's 7,000 officers on duty. To give you some idea of that there's no other police force with 7,000 officers. The police forces of Manchester, Birmingham and Liverpool don't have 7,000 officers. And all of those officers are being paid double time today because it's a bank holiday. So the cost of this is £11 million to the taxpayer. At football, the clubs have to make some kind of contribution towards it. And I just think and then there's the issue of safety. If you look at those crowds, it would be far better done in Hyde Park. And then you could have some control on who comes in. You could have real checks on weapons. You couldn't leave them behind to be collected tomorrow. And also you could try and stop the drug dealing and the like. When people paid a tenner to get in, that would cover the policing costs. But it's the idea that there isn't two-tier policing. The last superintendent, she obviously lives in a dream world. That's all I can say.
And Mike Neville, it's important to point out that your opinion here comes from many years of actually being on the beats. You've been a copper at the Notting Hill Festival, right? This isn't based on what you've read on the internet. This is from your ground experience of taking part.
Yeah. So I used to provide a special squad of officers called the Super Recognisers who were supplied to spot gang members and known thieves and drug dealers. So I was part of the operation for many, many years. And as a young police officer, I was on duty there as well, both as a PC and a sergeant. And you can only have to read the comments by former officers and some serving officers. And they really are tired of this. And it's got to change because it just isn't right. The idea that anybody can describe something as mainly peaceful when somebody's nearly dying in hospital, and there's likely to be more trouble tonight because the most effective thing at the Notting Hill Carnival, because today is usually the day of trouble, is PC rain. If the rain arrives, then everybody goes away and it disperses. The problem for the operational officers tonight is it's really sunny, and when people have had too many drugs or too much alcohol or are intent on causing violence, the sun does nothing but enhance the trouble.
Now, of course, Mike, anybody who criticises Notting Hill, we hear they're racist because it's a cultural celebration of the Afro-Caribbean community. And the politicians in London, particularly Sadiq Khan, the mayor, seems to defend it to the hilt. Why do you think we have this situation where, as you say, you're a far-right extremist at a riot or a public display about immigration, but you're celebrating culture, even if there's violence at the Notting Hill Carnival? Is that an example not just of two-tiered policing, but two-tiered politicians, two-tiered media?
It's two-tier government. And again, the ex-superintendent was saying, oh, the media report it with violence. It's the media who are saying phrases like mainly peaceful and the like. And it's just absolutely ridiculous to just throw these accusations of racism at everybody. If this was a football match, it would be banned. And I would call for it to be banned or moved and put into a place where it could be safely held, because at the moment it's neither safe for anybody attending, I would suggest, and the levels of crime are unacceptable.
OK, Mike, we've got a quick 30 seconds. Are you saying then, as it stands, the Notting Hill Carnival on the streets, that should be banned?
I'm saying it should be moved to Hyde Park, controlled, charged for, that the policing should be done in an area such as that it isn't safe because of the possibilities of crush, because people can conceal weapons and not go through knife arches and the like. Move it next year.
OK, superb. Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard detective, always has forthright opinions, and thanks for sharing them with us here on GB News. Now, lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including the King's niece could be the first female royal in decades to join the military. Doesn't that make you feel proud to be British? But first, here's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories. Former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson has died at the age of 76. The Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001. Sven also managed a series of high-profile clubs such as Manchester City, Benfica, Roma, Fiorentina, Lazio and more. Eriksson had pancreatic cancer and at the beginning of this year revealed he only had a year to live at best. Following his death, the Prime Minister has paid tribute, saying he was deeply saddened by his passing. He went on to say he'll be remembered for his tremendous contribution to English football, which brought joy to so many over the years. Prince William's also paid his respects on X, saying, I met him several times and was always struck by his charisma and passion for the game. He says, my thoughts are with his family and friends, a true gentleman of the game. A British man killed by a missile strike in eastern Ukraine has been named as safety advisor Ryan Evans. The 38-year-old was part of a reporting crew working with the news agency Reuters when the hotel they were staying at in Kramatorsk was struck on Saturday. The agency says they're devastated by his death. They're now urgently seeking more information about the attack. The strike also put 2 other journalists in hospital. One remains in a serious condition. And a senior Metropolitan Police officer says he's tired of saying the same words every year after a woman attending the Notting Hill Carnival with her child was stabbed. 3 people were stabbed yesterday at the annual event. The 32-year-old mother is in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on the first day. A heavy police presence is in place today for the main parade as it passes through the streets of West London. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, if you want to get in touch with me here at GB News, you know what to do. Go to gbnews.com/your say, and I'll read out the best of your comments later in the show. Do you think it's time to ban the Notting Hill Carnival? Let me know. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It's a bit of a northwest-southeast split over the next 24 hours. Wet and windy weather moving in from the Atlantic, but temperatures rising in the sunshine towards the southeast. High pressure here, keeping it largely settled, but low pressure moving in from the Atlantic will bring some wet and windy weather across the northern and western areas for the next few days. Across the UK for Monday evening, plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, however turning wetter and windier across Northern Ireland into Scotland as this next weather system moves in. The rain turning heavy as we head into the early hours. A Met Office rain warning coming into force by the end of the night. Southerly winds picking up too, drawing in some warm air, temperatures largely staying in double figures. So it's a wet start to the day on Tuesday across Scotland with outbreaks of heavy rain. There could be some local disruption, particularly across western and southern areas. We've seen quite a lot of rain here over recent weeks. Some tricky travelling conditions with the heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, temperatures in the mid-teens. Rain starting to clear Northern Ireland, some heavy bursts possible. And that rain also extending into northern England, western fringes of Wales and later the West Country. But much of England and Wales starting the day dry with plenty of sunshine. As we head through the day, this weather front just slowly pushes a little further south and eastwards, clearing Northern Ireland, brightening skies here. A few showers also for northern and western parts of Scotland, but the rain remains across southern Scotland, northern England, Wales, down into the West Country. Here quite cool and breezy. To the southeast of this, warm and sunny, temperatures reaching 25, 26 Celsius. Fresher behind it, temperatures generally the high teens. Through into the evening time on Tuesday, this weather front just stalls and stays across parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, northern England. Further heavy bursts possible. And then over the next few days, well, temperatures peak on Wednesday around 29 Celsius and then cooling as we end the week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner. On the M6 in Cheshire, the two outside lanes are blocked off southbound just before junction 18, the Middlewich and Holmes Chapel exit, at the scene of an accident, taking about half an hour and 7 miles of queues back to 19 and Knutsford. In Lincolnshire, the A15 remains closed north of Sleaford off the Holdingham roundabout following an accident, and in Norfolk, northeast of Thetford, the A11 is blocked northbound by a collision. Moving into East London, the Blackwall Tunnel has been closed northbound, a car's broken down, and a reminder if you're heading out of the capital, the A20 is closed on the Swanley bypass from Sidcup to the M25 until tomorrow morning for the weekend roadworks. In southwest London at Wimbledon, Wimbledon Hill Road is blocked southbound by emergency water main repairs. And finally in Devon at Chudley, the A38 has been closed southbound where a car has caught fire. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 4:38. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Lady Louise Windsor, the daughter of Prince Edward and Sophie, is apparently considering a career in the military, which would make her the first female royal to serve since her grandmother. Of course, that's Queen Elizabeth II. Currently studying at St Andrews's, the 20-year-old royal has expressed a strong interest in joining the armed forces, and that's a magnificent thing to me. Let's discuss it now with the royal commentator Caroline Aston. Caroline, welcome to the show. I think this is a wonderful story. When I read this morning, it really put a spring in my step. What a wonderful thing for a young, aspiring royal to do.
Absolutely. And she was recently described as an English rose who is blooming. And here's a wonderful example of that. And you're so right. The last senior royal lady to actually be on active service was our late great Queen, who in 1945, in the fading months of the Second World War, joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service and stripped down engines, changed sparking plugs and drained sump oil along with the best of them. Some wonderful photo ops back then. And here we have this relatively understated member of the royal family, a charming young girl who had a very difficult start to life. She was born by emergency cesarean. In fact, her father was out of the country when she was born, and both her mother, Sophie, now the Duchess of Edinburgh, and the baby actually had a very hard time at the beginning, and she's gone on to have eye surgery a couple of times that have sorted out a problem with her vision. She's a most charming young lady, and actually, you know, she's mentioned that she has 3 potential career choices. The military #1, she's really gone for army training at the cadet group at her university, but she's also expressed an interest in diplomacy and the law. But whatever, how nice to see this charming, understated young royal thinking about doing this. I can't wait to see if the English rose blooms and fulfills her promise.
Caroline, lovely sentiment. And also, she's the 8th in line to the throne. And we know we're having a tremendous problem with recruitment to the army itself. And so what better way to kind of ramp up the numbers of the rank and file members of the public, and especially to young women, than to have a royal laying out that this is a viable, proud career route for anybody to take?
Absolutely. I mean, what a poster girl for all of this. And I have to say, I think everyone must have been very moved back in 2021 when her grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh, went to his rest, when his carriage and those 2 fell ponies stood silent witness. And of course, he left his carriage and those ponies to the care of Lady Louise, who he had a very warm relationship with and had taught her carriage driving. Indeed, he taught the Duchess of Edinburgh as well. Very warm relationship there. And this is all such positive stuff. A gentle character with a strong heart and a great sense of duty. And you're showing that amazing picture of her dressed for carriage driving with what looks like a quarter of a pheasant on her hat. She looks amazing. And it was very much a warm, shared relationship with her grandfather towards the end of his life. And going forward, I see this young lady being very much the kind of new modern face of royalty, as well as acting, of course, as a poster girl, as I say, for joining the armed forces. A lot of qualities here. We don't hear a lot about it, but what we do hear is positive, and she'll be one to watch going forward as we look at the development of a modern, youthful royal family with a slimmed-down balcony presence. I can't wait to see what she does. Lots of potential there, and I'd give my eye teeth for that hat.
And Caroline Aston, yeah, I totally agree. It's a magnificent feathered hat there, that bonnet. And she said that she fell in love with the army cadets. And I just think it's a great thing for youngsters to get into, to give them that discipline, that patriotism and that pride in their country that so often is sadly missing. What a magnificent royal example Lady Louise Windsor could set. Thank you so much for joining us, royal commentator Caroline Aston. Put a spring in my step. Thank you very much. Now, are the Gallagher brothers getting back together? Is it time to crack open the champagne supernova? Apologies, I'm Ryan Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Michael found the recipe for success without going to university. Instead, he went looking for answers inside of a kitchen. The 22-year-old has just finished a level 2 course in professional cookery at UCB, a college in Birmingham.
When I started UCB, I was expecting to be so intense from day one, but it's not. It sort of builds up, so to the point where you get comfortable. And building that comfort is a huge part of becoming a chef, because you need to be comfortable being in your own skin.
This week, tens of thousands of students get their A-level results. The college wants them to remember university isn't the only option after school, and West Midlands Mayor Richard Parker agrees.
University is the right route for lots of our young people, but there are other pathways to getting access to qualifications that will give young people the skills they need to succeed in life.
Further education principal Rosa Wells says apprenticeships and technical courses are also great routes to a career.
Here at University College Birmingham, we offer vocational courses. These are hands-on technical courses that can give people a different opportunity, something different to school. So we've got brilliant facilities that really give students industry standard training.
A skills shortage across the UK means youngsters learning trades are desperately needed. 36% of job vacancies are due to shortages. The Labour government's new body, Skills England, has been created to bring training providers and businesses together with local and national authorities plus unions to target trade gaps and regional requirements. Michael's now finishing his qualification. Where he goes next is down to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 4:46. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now brace yourselves because maybe you're going to be the one that saves me. Do I have to carry on? And after all, I've been told to stop. Now you might wonder, you're my Wonderwall. Apologies. Now, you might wonder why I'm singing Oasis. Well, it's because Liam and Noel Gallagher look set to announce. This is the big one. No more messing about. This is their long-awaited return. The once feuding brothers have reportedly struck a massive secret deal for a number of concerts next summer. Well, I'm joined by showbiz journalist and Oasis superfan in the studio now. Welcome to the show, Julie and Trainer. Tell me, this is the one, right? Because we've heard so many times, so many rumours over the years, but this seems to be the absolute golden ticket. Why do you think this is going to happen?
Yes, I'm really excited. Firstly, Liam and Noel, they've both put out announcements on their Twitter pages saying that tomorrow there will be a big reveal. So it's interesting that they both have put this out. And yes, everyone's just super excited, and there has been so many rumours that they are set to reunite. So tomorrow at 8 a.m. it will be revealed. I've
got to say, it's a very un-rock and roll and a very un-Oasis time, 8 a.m. to do this.
That's what
Normally
I
you'd
thought.
expect them to be sleeping in, but they also was it at Leeds last night? Liam put this on the screen as well, and he dedicated his final song to Noel. Of course, there was a long feud between the two brothers, and that was all about Noel's Mrs. Sarah MacDonald, right? But they've split up.
Yes.
And it seems that she was the big barrier to the two brothers getting back together, and now it just seems that all bets are off. This is happening.
Yes, well, for years they've had massive arguments and it's been very highly publicised. They broke up 15 years ago whenever Liam smashed up a guitar, as you do before you go on stage, and almost hit Noel with it. So he just then quit and had enough. But yes, in the last year, Noel has got a divorce from his publicist wife, and it has cost him £20 million, along with his £8 million mansion. So this could be the reason now that this is set to happen, and they're thought to earn $400 million from it, with 10 dates in Wembley next year. And also dates in Manchester, Scotland, and possibly even a Glastonbury headlining gig. So watch this space.
It's amazing how divorce can force people back into the arena of work. We saw with John Cleese. He called his comeback tour the Alimony Tour.
Yes.
20 million quid. Now, that is an expensive divorce. 8 million quid mansion, losing that to his missus. But we might benefit from his misfortune in that sense. And, of course, there was a lot of banter, a lot of toxicity between the brothers because of Sarah. We read a lot about that in the press. Some choice comments exchanged. For a long time, the two brothers were barely communicating, but things seem to have thawed out. Now, when did they split up? Did they split up last January or something like that?
The band split up.
So Sarah MacDonald and Noel.
Yeah, it was sometime last year.
So it seems that when they broke up, the two brothers have now started to form a closer alliance.
Well, I just also think it might be because they're getting older now. Obviously, there's a massive offer on the table for them, and also their children now are in their 20s. I guess they never got to see both their dads up on stage performing like that. So maybe it's just all come together, and the feud seems to have healed slightly. For instance, last night at the Reading Festival, Liam hailed his brother Noel as the greatest songwriter ever. Well, one of them. And in a recent interview as well, Noel Noel has been very complimentary as well about Liam. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed they have mended the feud. And I'm sure their mum will be delighted as well, because who wants to see their two sons arguing all the time? And not only that, but there's still such a huge appetite for their music. After all these years, people still love Oasis and sing their songs. And, I just can't wait. It really will be very iconic.
So you think it's fair to say they're not looking back in anger?
No, hopefully not. Hopefully they're looking forward to the future. And yeah, it's also great and refreshing to see some rock and roll for a change. You know, we've seen a lot of Taylor Swift this year, a lot of TikTok stars, safe pop music. Now we want a bit of Britpop back.
Yeah, do you think they'll be enjoying some cigarettes and alcohol on the night? Because I've heard they've cleaned up their act.
I don't believe that, not at all. I went to see Liam a few months ago in the O2 and he's still very much rock and roll. And I also saw Noel last year as well in Camden. And there's definitely still a lot of rocking and rolling happening behind the scenes, put it that way.
Do you think when they serve the food backstage, they'll get a roll with it?
Hopefully. I'm loving all these innuendos.
I'm just trying to inject a bit of ludicrousness into something I'm very, very excited about myself. Now, do you think they'll deliver the same performance that they were capable of back in the days? I saw the Sex Pistols on their comeback tour, and I ummed about going. Let's face it, they're getting on a bit. They've been through divorces, but I'm so glad that I went because they still had the magic. Do you think they've both been very successful as solo artists in their own right? And they both perform Oasis tracks. They seem tight, they seem up for it, and there's a lot of money on the table. I think fans are going to absolutely go berserk for this. It's going to sell out really, really quickly.
Absolutely. I think so. And tickets are allegedly going to be on sale maybe as quick as next week, with the price point being in around £100, which I think is pretty reasonable, although I imagine a lot of people will sell those on and make a killing on it. Do you know that way?
Absolutely.
But, I mean, they're still fairly young men, in their 50s, 51 and 56, I think. So, no, I think they've still got it. And like you said, they've still been performing while they've been broken up. So they still have got that, showbiz appeal, and they know what they're doing.
And it's 30 years, of course.
Since Definitely Maybe.
So again, sometimes, you look for that kind of hook. It's now or never, and it brings the financial deal in. So, I mean, in terms of you as a fan, how many times are you going to go?
Oh, gosh. Once or twice at least, and it will be very nostalgic for fans, and as well with these concerts they can get a bit blurry as well, so it'll definitely be a big night, put it that way.
Well, I went to the V Festival to see them, and I can just about remember it. They came on late, as you'd expect. 8 a.m. tomorrow is meant to be the time. I suspect they might keep us hanging on a bit later than 8 a.m. on the button. That's the way they do it. And irrespective, I think people are going to lap it up. They're going to go and see it.
And I didn't even think they'd be out of bed by 8 a.m.
No. Well, probably somebody else will press the button for them. Thank you very much for joining us, Julianne Traynor. Make sure you get your tickets, and whatever you do, Oasis guaranteed, no doubt, to live forever. The final pun of this hour, but plenty more to come in the next hour. I must apologise. I'm getting shouted at in my ear. Stop singing. Stop saying puns. I can't. I'm afraid it's in my blood. Now, still to come, we'll bring you more reaction to the news. The legendary former England manager, Sven-Göran Eriksson, has passed away. A legend passed away, and we'll smile about that as well as paying our huge respects. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now it's time for your weather, and here's Greg Dewhurst.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It's a bit of a northwest-southeast split over the next 24 hours. Wet and windy weather moving in from the Atlantic, but temperatures rising in the sunshine towards the southeast. High pressure here, keeping it largely settled, but low pressure moving in from the Atlantic will bring some wet and windy weather across northern and western areas for the next few days. Across the UK for Monday evening, plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, however turning wetter and windier across Northern Ireland into Scotland as this next weather system moves in. The rain turning heavy as we head into the early hours. A Met-Office rain warning coming into force by the end of the night. Southerly winds picking up too, drawing in some warm air, temperatures largely staying in double figures. So it's a wet start to the day on Tuesday across Scotland with outbreaks of heavy rain. There could be some local disruption, particularly across western and southern areas. We've seen quite a lot of rain here over recent weeks. Some tricky travelling conditions with the heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, temperatures in the mid-teens. Rain starting to clear Northern Ireland, some heavy bursts possible. And that rain also extending into northern England, western fringes of Wales and later the West Country. But much of England and Wales starting the day dry with plenty of sunshine. As we head through the day, this weather front just slowly pushes a little further south and eastwards, clearing Northern Ireland, brightening skies here. A few showers also for northern and western parts of Scotland, but the rain remains across southern Scotland, northern England, Wales, down into the West Country. Here quite cool and breezy. To the southeast of this, warm and sunny, temperatures reaching 25, 26 Celsius. Fresher behind it, temperatures generally the high teens. Through into the evening time on Tuesday, this weather front just stalls and stays across parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, northern England. Further heavy bursts possible. And then over the next few days, well, temperatures peak on Wednesday around 29 Celsius and then cooling as we end the week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening to you. My name is Johnny Ratner. Long delays of at least half an hour continue heading south down the M6 through Cheshire just before junction 18, the A54 exit for Middlewich. The two outside lanes on that four-lane stretch are blocked off by an accident and it's queuing back to 19 at Knutsford. In Rutland, just north of Stamford, the A1, the Great North Road is blocked southbound in the Greetham turn-off and the Pickworth exit because of an obstruction. In Norfolk, northeast of Thetford, the A11 is blocked northbound by an accident, and in southwest London, the A219 at Wimbledon has been closed southbound. On Wimbledon Hill Road, emergency water main repairs are leaving 9 buses having to reroute. Big problems on the Elizabeth line in London. It's currently suspended out of Bond Street to the Heathrow terminals and Reading, with severe delays on the rest of the line after an obstruction got caught on the overhead power lines. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. And you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. on this Bank Holiday Monday, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, tributes are continuing to pour in for the former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who has sadly passed away, aged 76. following a brave battle with pancreatic cancer. And we'll pay tribute to the international manager, the international playboy and the legend who forever gave England fans that miracle 5-1 Müllering of Germany in Munich. And before the general election, Sir Keir Starmer promised to relight the fire of optimism. Well, tomorrow, though, he'll tell us things will get worse before they get better. Forget Tony Blair's things only get better. Now, it seems, things only get bitter for beleaguered British voters. And there are over 90 arrests, 3 stabbings and 15 police officers assaulted on the opening day, family day, of the Notting Hill Carnival yesterday. Critics say it's dangerous, but those who are in favour claim it brings in over £300 million annually to the local economy in London. Is it time to ditch the Notting Hill Carnival? And one of Britain's most iconic supergroups, Oasis, look definitely maybe set to announce a comeback tour at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. You could call that, what's the story? Morning Glory. So get your champagne supernova on the chill. All that's coming up in your next hour. Sorry, no singing. Thanks for joining me on the show this Bank Holiday Monday now. There's lots and lots to talk about. Notting Hill Carnival, we've had 2 former police officers on the show already today. One saying that Notting Hill is a part of the rich cultural tapestry of London and the United Kingdom and we should stop laying into it. The other said it benefits from 2-tiered policing and he operated on the beat at Notting Hill for years. He said if Notting Hill was policed in the same way as a right-wing riot or even a football match on a Saturday, there wouldn't be 90 arrests, there'd be 900 arrests. What do you think? Let me know your views, gbnews.com/your say. But before we get to the last hour of the show, it's your headlines and it's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Italian lawyer Nancy Dell'Olio has paid tribute to her ex-husband and former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson after he's died at the age of 76. Nancy says, "I choose to remember the good times we shared and the moments that brought so much joy to our lives." The Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001. Sven also managed a series of high-profile clubs such as Manchester City, Benfica, Roma and Fiorentina. Eriksson had pancreatic cancer and at the beginning of this year he revealed he only had a year to live at best. Former England forward Wayne Rooney's described Eriksson as a special man as tributes continue to pour in. The Prime Minister says he was deeply saddened by his passing. He went on to say he'll be remembered for his tremendous contribution to English football which brought joy to so many over the years. Prince William's also paid respects on X, saying, "I met him several times and was always struck by his charisma and passion for the game. My thoughts are with his family and friends, a true gentleman of the game." Former England player Danny Mills told GB News he was one of a kind.
I don't remember Sven ever raising his voice, let alone shouting. He was very much in the Arsene Wenger mould of management, spoke very, very softly. His football knowledge was absolutely incredible.
In other news, everyone has been accounted for after a major incident was declared following the breakout of a fire overnight at a block of flats in Dagenham. Over 80 people were evacuated from the building, with 2 people being taken to hospital. London Fire Commissioner Andy Rose says a full investigation into the fire and its cause will now get underway. He says there will undoubtedly be concerns around the fire safety issues present within the building, and this will form part of our report. A British man killed by a missile strike in eastern Ukraine has been named as safety advisor Ryan Evans. The 38-year-old was part of a reporting crew working with the news agency Reuters when the hotel they were staying in at Kramatorsk was struck on Saturday. The agency says they're devastated by his death and they're now urgently seeking more information about the attack. The strike also put 2 other journalists in hospital. One remains in a serious condition. This morning, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz laid flowers at a memorial site where 3 people were killed and 8 injured in a stabbing on Friday. The 26-year-old behind the attack in Western Germany has been named as Issa al-H. That was after he gave himself up to the police. The Syrian national is now being investigated by German federal prosecutors for links to the Islamic State terror group. Italian prosecutors have placed the captain of the super yacht which sank off the coast of Sicily last week under investigation. It's been reported that James Cutfield, a 51-year-old New Zealand national, is being investigated for manslaughter and shipwreck. The vessel's sinking led to the deaths of British tech tycoon Mike Lynch, his 18-year-old daughter Hannah, and 5 others. A senior Metropolitan Police officer says he's tired of saying the same words every year after a woman attended the Notting Hill Carnival with her child and was stabbed. 3 people were stabbed yesterday at the annual event. The 32-year-old mother is in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said 15 officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on the first day. A heavy police presence is in place today for the main parade event as it passes through the streets of West London. In the Middle East, tensions have escalated between Israel and Hezbollah after an exchange of fire on both sides. The Israeli military carried out a series of airstrikes on southern Lebanon early yesterday morning, saying it believed Hezbollah was planning to carry out an attack of its own. The Iran-backed militants then launched drones at Israel, allegedly in response to the killing of one of its top commanders in an airstrike in Beirut last month. In response to this, the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy has urged restraint on both sides. Back in the UK, the NHS hospital discharge system has been described by the government as broken. A new survey has revealed almost a fifth of UK care providers reported week-long waiting times for people to be transferred. 17% of respondents said the average length of time for a person to be discharged into their care was 1 to 2 weeks, while around 7% saying the average wait was 3 or more. And some good news now. The world's oldest man turns 112 today. John Tinniswood was born in Liverpool on this day in 1912, and he says the secret to his long life is just luck. Asked how he feels to be turning 112, he told Guinness World Records, in all honesty, no different. He said, I don't feel that age, I don't get excited over it, and that's probably why I've reached it. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'm back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is set to announce that things will get worse before they get any better. Now, I don't remember that in the manifesto, do you? The Prime Minister will also face cronyism allegations as major Labour Party donor Lord Wahid Ali was given a Downing Street security pass despite not having a formal job on the premises. And I'll discuss this in the studio further with my reporter, GB News, Adam Cherry. Adam, welcome to the show. So before the election, we were told that there'd be a relighting of the fire of optimism. That fire seems to be quickly rained away at a pace, and now we're being told to brace ourselves. Things are going to get much, much worse.
Yeah, so much for change, right? The government's in tray of problems is absolutely skyrocketing. You have the overcrowding of prisons, and obviously the riots haven't helped that either. You've got this winter fuel allowance cut, the so-called £22 billion black hole in the public finances, which is going to lead into the pretty scary Halloween budget that we've got coming up. And tomorrow's speech is part of that, is warning people not to expect rabbits out the hat or a good time for quite a while. Now, I think the strategy here is get this stuff out of the way early, because there is some truth in saying that some of these problems are inherited, like overcrowding in prisons, for example. Make the unpopular choices now, and then bank on the fact that by the time we get to an election in 5 years, they can say, look, we're halfway through the job, we've been through the tough bit, give us another 5 years to get to the really fun stuff. That's the idea anyway. Of course, it doesn't always work. Assuming that the voters have amnesia over the last 4 years when you come to an election is always a gamble. It did work to a certain extent with the coalition government in 2010. By the time the Tories came to 2015, they were able to offer something a little bit more interesting, and they won a majority. But it's certainly not helped by this cronyism stuff, right? So the cronyism thing is made worse today. As you mentioned, Lord Wahid Ali, a massive party donor, last 20 years, £500,000 to the party, a lot of cash to Starmer personally. Now we learn via the Sunday Times that he's been wandering around Downing Street with a pass, doesn't actually have a job. Who gave him that pass? Why was that signed off? What was he doing there? Now, Downing Street's response has been to say, well, it was only for a few weeks. It was to organise a party in the garden and he doesn't have it anymore. But there are still questions over that. And it's compounded by the other appointments to the civil service. So there are Labour insiders, Labour donors, there are several of them, who have now been given plum jobs at the top of the civil service. And there's a risk of appearing like this undermines civil service impartiality. So little by little, these things are adding up and make a big problem for the government, especially because they say that their electoral pitch was change, was an end to this hypocrisy, to this sleaze, this cronyism, cash for jobs. So the public will look at this and say, or some might say, this is reflective of hypocrisy on the part of this new team.
Adam Sherry, superb stuff. And let's speak now to one of Tony Blair's former special advisors, John McTernan. John, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. Now, before the general election, we were told of this relighting of the fire of optimism. A lot of people said, John, that Sir Keir Starmer was Tony Blair in disguise. If only. When you were working with Tony Blair back in the day, that election, that campaign, that first year was defined by its almost unbridled optimism. The energy, the positivity we saw came out of that campaign was infectious, no matter what your politics. In stark contrast, John, this first couple of months of Starmerism seems to have been a real downer. Is that a mistake?
It's not even 2 months yet. It was July the 4th, the election. It's weeks since the general election. And the truth is the inheritance that Tony Blair had was much better, economically much better in terms of the rising tax revenues for the government. Labour's inherited lots and lots of hidden problems. The prisons one was an obvious one. Lots of problems which were stoked before the election by the Tory government, like the riots. And Labour's handling everything, I think, really well, really professionally. So, and the one thing that Keir was elected for was to be a guy who'd level with you and then have a plan to deal with the issues he was talking to you about. So I fully expect to see a plan as well as a diagnosis tomorrow. And you've seen Labour moving swiftly to deal with issues, whether it is the prisons inheritance or the much deferred pay deals for rail workers or for junior doctors. All those issues were kicked down the road by the Tories. They've been dealt with by Labour, and I think that's the thing which is, Starmer's mark as a politician is he'll level with you and then he'll fix it.
The trouble with that, though, John McTernan, is that we've seen a 6% downturn in the Labour Party's popularity. That vote largely seems to have slipped over to the Reform Party. And I wonder if that's because you say that Labour's getting things done. It's getting things done by letting criminals out early at the same time as locking up people for posting Facebook messages. It tells us there's a £22 billion black hole, but then it throws a further £10 billion into that black hole by giving pay rises for the unions, for NHS, for teachers, for train drivers, for junior doctors, all of which the public has to pay for. So we were promised optimism. Instead, we're having prisoners being let out early and a bigger and bigger financial debt, which taxpayers have got to pick up.
People are being correctly sent to prison for racist riots in which they intended to burn people alive because they were brown or because they were black. Those are actually offences. And the idea that you take it lightly, that people have been in prison for being racist rioters, is a striking part of the discourse post the riots.
Where were people attempted to be set on fire, John?
In Rotherham, they've been trying to burn that hotel and burn people alive.
And that was a terrible, terrible thing to do. That was one or two individuals, and they absolutely deserve to be jailed. Sir Keir Starmer in Northern Ireland was characterising the riots, the whole riots, as racist riots. That's been part of the backlash. There's a feeling, John McTernan, that anybody who's complained about the symptoms, the causes behind these riots potentially, has been branded as racist. When the riots happened in 2011 in Tottenham, when the black community experienced social discourse, Sir Keir Starmer then was in charge of banging people up. That bit happened, but there was also then a conversation about the frustrations and the reasons behind it. Do you think that's going to happen under this Prime Minister with the white working classes or not?
I deeply, deeply regret that there was not a proper inquiry like the Scarman report after the London uprisings. Absolutely regret that. But as for your suggestion, which I think is beneath you, that the rioters, the racist rioters, were in some way expressing anything on behalf of the white working class of Britain, I totally disagree with that. I think it's extraordinary that you think that racist rioters who tried to burn people alive were saying something.
No, I'm not saying that, John. What you're doing, John, here is that you're trying to take the actions of a couple of contemptible people who deserve to be in the jail as symptomatic of everybody who expressed a concern about those riots. And you wouldn't do that about the 2011 riots. You wouldn't say that the worst perpetrators there represented everybody who was frustrated about the lack of social cohesion, would you? So why are you doing it now?
No, I'm saying there's a really straightforward lesson to be learned from the racist riots, and that is we have a huge issue in Britain.
Keep calling them racist riots.
Well, that's because they were racist riots.
Everybody who took part was a racist.
We have a huge issue in Britain. Let's say we have a huge issue in Britain because there's a minority of people who refuse to integrate with British society. They refuse to accept the norms of British society. They refuse to accept that we are a multi-faith, multi-ethnic society, and those white racist rioters deserve to be met with the full force of the law.
John McTurnan, do you think that people who come into the United Kingdom and refuse to integrate in terms of speaking the language, or they live in silos aside from wider society and they don't integrate, are they also a problem? Or is it just the white people looking in who think that could be an issue? I mean, does this go every way, or is it just white people that are a problem?
I'm telling you the integration problem is these white people who refuse to accept that we are a multi-ethnic, multi-faith society. These white people who decide to show us what they think of our country, of our norms, by attacking police in riots, who show us what they think by burning down a citizen advice bureau. They show us what they think by trying to burn people alive because they're white or because they're brown. These are the people who don't integrate, and they need to first be dealt with, and then they need to be taught a way to integrate into the norms of 21st century UK.
What about the over 140 arrests of the Black Lives Matter riots? What about when officers have been firebombed of Labour MPs by pro-Palestine protesters? Do you share similar chagrin for that? Or is your chagrin only directed at white people?
The disturbances at the end of one of the Black Lives Matter rallies was dealt with by the police properly, and people were arrested and prosecuted properly. That's what the police do. They arrest and prosecute people possibly. But the notion that there are any legitimate concerns being expressed by racist rioters is utterly untrue. And their actions should be condemned. And the notion that they represent or speak for anybody is the most condescending thing that I've ever heard expressed about the white working class.
I think as a member of the white working class who grew up a proud member of the white working class, to hear you saying that anybody who took part in those riots is racist, I think is ultimately contemptible. I really do. How can you say that everybody who took part in that shared the sentiments of a tiny minority who deserve to be jailed? You would never say that about the Tottenham riots, would you? You would never say that.
What I don't understand is why you think that people who demonstrating about refugees, asylum seekers, in a hotel in Rotherham and try to burn them alive, or anything other than racist, or the people
I'm not saying that.
who try to riot in sympathy and burn down things across the country.
I'm absolutely not saying that. I've never said at one point ever that I express sympathy with those who try and burn things down. What I'm saying is to intimate that those tiny minority represent the majority is, I think, beneath you, John McTurnan.
Look, You go along to a racist riot, you're a racist. That's it. It's really straightforward. There's no difficulty for me to say that you're attending a racist riot, you're throwing rocks at the police, you're trying to hold the police off from enforcing law and order, and you're doing that on behalf of racists who are trying to burn people alive. You're a racist. I mean, he looks like a racist, talks like a racist, acts like a racist, is a racist. The same thing with ducks, you know that.
Astonishing. Absolutely astonishing that you think that anybody who goes on a riot, at what point do they become racist? When they turn up at the beginning, or only when things get violent? Are they racist from the outset, or only when it kicks off?
Mate, you're trying to distinguish between good rioters and bad rioters.
No, I'm talking about people at social protests, okay, are allowed to protest. But then when it kicks off, you then say, well, everyone was racist at the outset. It's astonishing.
People didn't go to those riots thinking they were attending a prayer vigil. They knew what they were attending. They were attending a racist riot. And oddly enough, I think I'll give people the agency and I've got the decency to accept. People have agency. You go to a racist riot, you're probably a racist.
John McTurn, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us on the show today. It's not often I'm left speechless. Now, moving on, a British safety advisor has been killed in a missile strike on a hotel in the Ukraine. I'll bring you more on that in a moment. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I want to see a flagpole and I want to see the Union Jack when it's necessary. I must say I don't want to see some other flags maybe, but that's my opinion. I'm one of the, I'm classed as a dinosaur, I'm an oldie. So, I go for what I want to know.
Well, you're not a dinosaur in our books. What would you say to the people who were complaining about the Union flag and saying that it's a sign of national? What's your response to them?
Well, in this village, best thing is for them to get out of it. I'm being quite blunt. That's how I feel. I've lived in this village 60-odd years, 62 years, nearly 63 years. We've never had this problem. In our early days, we all helped each other. No one went against anybody. We agreed things. We used to have meetings up the village hall, as it was then. And it was all okay, but all of a sudden we've got newcomers coming in, and I'm not against it because we've got quite a few, and a lot of them are damn nice people, but we've just got one or two who are a bit anti. And, they don't do nothing much for the village, but they soon put the spoke in when we want to do something like that. That's my feeling.
But you think we should be proud of our national symbols, proud of our national flag?
Definitely, yeah. I was in the army. I only did national service, and when I finished national service, I was ill for a while actually. But anyhow, and then I went and joined the prison service, and that's how I've worked in things which the flag is important to us. We should always be proud of it. Not like these people that say we shouldn't have it because it might upset somebody because it's not their flag. Well, so what? It's our flag, so we should be proud of it. Sod the rest of them. Excuse my... but that's me.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:25. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. That's the second day of the Notting Hill Carnival, and despite the bright colours and music, the event always seems to be plagued by crime. Now, 3 people were stabbed yesterday, with one in a life-threatening condition. So far, police have made over 90 arrests. And joining me now to discuss this is the former Senior Metropolitan Police Investigating Officer. Welcome to the show. Now then, let's talk to you about the state of play of the finances, because you mentioned to me, Colin Sutton, about how much all of the operation costs. And you put a tweet out earlier with the numbers, and I was blown away by the numbers. Tell us how expensive it costs to police this event.
You weren't the only one blown away, Martin. I didn't know. Last year apparently cost just shy of £11.75 million.
This is the wrong angle, is it?
£11.75 million.
And Colin, what would you say to people who, I spoke to Mike Neville earlier, who said that this is the ultimate example of two-tier policing. If people behave in the way they do at the Notting Hill Carnival, for example, at a white working-class football match, then there'd be many, many more arrests.
I can see that argument. It's not one I necessarily agree with. I think somebody once said to me that public order policing is the art of the possible. And when you've got, the numbers you've got there, even with 7,000 police officers, you can't deal with everything that you see. And some of it has to be done afterwards. But the thing that shocked me yesterday, that really got under my skin, was the fact that you've got a police service in London which is trying desperately, the men and women who are at the front line doing the job desperately want to do a good job and desperately want to do it well, and they're hampered all the time by their lack of resources. And yet here we are spending nearly £12 million on one event, and it's £12 million would pay for, I don't know, even probably getting on for 200 police officers for a year. Think what those police officers could be doing.
And so, Colin, what's the solution if we purely look at this operationally in terms of the cost? For example, Premier League football games, the football clubs are expected to chip in. Do you think it's time for the Notting Hill, the organisers or every trader? How will we get through the finances?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, somebody tweeted back to me last night and said, "Oh, it brings in £300 million in trade." Well, the Metropolitan Police don't see any of that. There's nobody subsidising what it's costing them to put these 7,000 officers out for 3 days. And I think football's a good example. Actually, more than 30 years ago, we decided that it wasn't right for the public purse to be subsidising events that people want to go to enjoy. And stewarding took place, and police withdrew from inside football grounds by and large, and those that were in there had to be paid for by the clubs themselves, those who were making the vast profits on that. If you put this together with the disruption that this event causes to those people who live nearby, I think the time has come to look seriously at looking at, Battersea Park, Hyde Park, something like that. Put it in, make it more of a festival. Put it inside a location where it can be stewarded, where there can be knife arches, where the people can be protected, and it isn't at the cost of 7,000 police officers having to spend bank holiday weekend there, £11.7 million being spent by the Metropolitan Police, officers being assaulted, members of the public being robbed, stabbed and sexually assaulted. It's just, why do we allow this to go on? Why do we allow this to go on in the name of tradition?
And it's interesting when you look at the figures that you sent me there that we put on the screen. There's £5.5 million in overtime costs for police work. And of course, that's because it's on a bank holiday and it takes place over a weekend. When you add all of that up, £11.754 million, an astonishing cost to the public purse. And as you say, it's balanced off by the 300 million coming in, or so we're told, but that doesn't get back to the police. As a consequence, this is the taxpayer that foots that bill. If you put this inside a park, it could be ticketed, it could be controlled, it could be made much more safe, but that would likely encounter massive backlash from the community, and it certainly would from London's Mayor, Sadiq Khan. Do you think that's ever likely to happen?
Not while he's mayor, no, and there's no chance. There's no chance of that going in the near future. Sadly, is there? One of the things on there, one of the items on there that I didn't quite understand was £200,000 on hotels, and I thought, where's that come from? It's because we have to have officers drafted in from all over the country to assist. There aren't enough trained and available officers to deal with this event in the Metropolitan Police. They have to get officers from other forces, and of course, they need putting up in hotels overnight while they're there. I just think with all that's going on and all the issues that we have and all the difficulties we have in trying to provide a decent police service for the whole of London, why do we waste this money on one event when it could be done in a much more sensible way in the 21st century?
And Colin, with all of that in mind, I asked the same question to my first guest, my second guest. I'd like to ask you, do you think it's time to end the Notting Hill in its current format? And as you say, it's time to move it into a park. Is it time to ditch the carnival as it stands?
I don't think it should be ditched. I mean, it's not one of my favourite events of the year, and I've been there a good number of times and remember it and remember the fear that we felt on one or two occasions when we were there and came under fire. But that was a long time ago. But it hasn't got much better for police officers doing it. But I understand that it's a cultural festival to some degree. But let's have it as a festival. Let's have it somewhere where it can be properly and safely policed, but not by the police, where we can deal with it like we deal with festivals like Glastonbury or Reading or anything like that. That's what it is. That's what it's become. Why does it have to be in the public streets and with all the difficulties in policing that brings?
Yeah, thank you very much, former Senior Metropolitan Police Investigating Officer Colin Sutton. Thanks for joining me on the show and giving me your opinion. Superb. Now we'll have plenty more to come on the legendary England football manager Sven-Göran Eriksson as tributes pour into the former England gaffer and international playboy. But first, is your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Italian lawyer Nancy Dell'Olio has paid tribute to her ex-husband and former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson after he's died at the age of 76. Nancy says, "I choose to remember the good times we shared and the moments that brought joy to our lives." The Swedish national became the first ever foreign manager of the England men's football team in 2001. Sven also managed a series of high-profile clubs such as Man City, Benfica, Roma and Fiorentina. Eriksson had pancreatic cancer and at the beginning of 2024 revealed he only had a year to live at best. His former England captain David Beckham posted an emotional tribute on social media. He said, "We laughed, we cried and we knew we were saying goodbye. Sven, thank you for always being the person you have always been, passionate, caring, calm and a true gentleman. I will be forever grateful for you making me your captain, but I will forever hold these last memories of this day with you and your family. Thank you, Sven, and in your last words to me, it will be okay." The Prime Minister has said he'll be remembered for his tremendous contribution to English football, which brought joy to so many over the years. And Prince William's also paid respects on X, saying, "I met him several times and was always struck by his charisma and passion for the game. My thoughts are with his family and friends, a true gentleman of the game." In other news, a British man killed by a missile strike in eastern Ukraine has been named as safety advisor Ryan Evans. The 38-year-old was part of a reporting crew working with the news agency Reuters when the hotel they were staying at in Kramatorsk was struck on Saturday. The agency says they're devastated by his death. They're now urgently seeking more information about the attack. That strike also put 2 other journalists in hospital. One remains in a serious condition. And a senior Metropolitan Police officer says he's tired of saying the same words every year after a woman attending the Notting Hill Carnival with her child was stabbed. 3 people were stabbed yesterday at the annual event. The 32-year-old mother is in a serious condition in hospital. Police have also said that 15 officers were assaulted and 90 arrests were made on the first day. A heavy police presence is in place today for the main parade as it passes through the streets of West London. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report. Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, if you want to get in touch with me here at GB News, you know what to do. Go to gbnews.com/your say. It's been a lively show. Get your comments in. I'll read the best of them out a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It's a bit of a northwest-southeast split over the next 24 hours. Wet and windy weather moving in from the Atlantic, but temperatures rising in the sunshine towards the southeast. High pressure here, keeping it largely settled, but low pressure moving in from the Atlantic will bring some wet and windy weather across northern and western areas for the next few days. Across the UK for Monday evening, plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, however turning wetter and windier across Northern Ireland into Scotland as this next weather system moves in. The rain turning heavy as we head into the early hours. A Met Office rain warning coming into force by the end of the night. Southerly winds picking up too, drawing in some warm air, temperatures largely staying in double figures. So it's a wet start to the day on Tuesday across Scotland with outbreaks of heavy rain. There could be some local disruption, particularly across western and southern areas. We've seen quite a lot of rain here over recent weeks. Some tricky travelling conditions with the heavy rain pushing north and eastwards, temperatures in the mid-teens. Rain starting to clear Northern Ireland, some heavy bursts possible. And that rain also extending into northern England, western fringes of Wales and later the West Country. But much of England and Wales starting the day dry with plenty of sunshine. As we head through the day, this weather front just slowly pushes a little further south and eastwards, clearing Northern Ireland, brightening skies here. A few showers also for northern and western parts of Scotland, but the rain remains across southern Scotland, northern England, Wales, down into the West Country here, quite cool and breezy. To the southeast of this, warm and sunny, temperatures reaching 25, 26 Celsius, fresher behind it, temperatures generally the high teens. Through into the evening time on Tuesday, this weather front just stalls and stays across parts of southwest England, Wales, the Midlands, northern England, further heavy bursts possible. And then over the next few days, well, temperatures peak on Wednesday around 29 Celsius and then cooling as we end the week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. In Rutland, a few miles north of Stamford, a serious accident is blocking the A1 heading south along the Great North Road from the Greetham turnoff down to the Pickworth exit. In Herefordshire, to the northeast of Hay-on-Wye, the A4112, that has been closed on that short stretch between Kinnersley and Sarsfield at the scene of an accident. Buckinghamshire, northwest of Winslow, the A413 is blocked by a collision. And the M4 in Berkshire is down to 2 lanes eastbound at junction 7 near Slough following an accident. Heading out of London, the A20, the Swanley bypass closed towards the M25 from Sidcup at Criddles Corner. That's for the works until the early hours of tomorrow morning. And Elizabeth Line trains are suspended out of the capital from Bond Street to the Heathrow terminals and Reading after an object got caught on the overhead line. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 5:38. We're on the final furlong. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Ryan Evans, a British safety advisor working with the news agency Reuters, was tragically killed in a Russian missile strike on a hotel in Ukraine as tensions in the region continue to escalate. And joining me now to discuss this and tell us more is the former NATO commander, Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Chris, welcome to the show. A very, very sad situation of a former British serviceman caught in this missile attack, Ryan Evans. Tell me, what more do we know about Ryan Evans and the circumstances of his sad death?
Well, Martin, I can tell you that he was, I'm afraid to say, killed by an Iskander missile, which is a ballistic missile fired by the Russians. And I'm afraid it's part of that indiscriminate campaign that the Russians are conducting against the Ukrainian population and infrastructure. And I'm afraid to say he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And of course, it's a real tragedy. Of course it is. And we salute his service and obviously mourn his death.
I've got some pictures on the screen here. This is Ryan Evans. He leaves behind a family. You can see 3 children there. He was a former British serviceman, an army serviceman who worked with the Royal Welsh Fusiliers. He served in Northern Ireland. He served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I was contacted by a buddy of mine who knows of him and said this is a great loss to those who served with him. He was well known in the close protection circuit. And of course, it's important to point out, Chris Parry, that a lot of former British servicemen go into arenas of war in a capacity to try and keep other people safe. And that's what was happening in this instance. Ryan Evans was bravely assisting Reuters journalists in attempts to keep them safe in theatres of war. And of course, Chris Parry, in theatres of war, tragedies happen, and that's precisely what's happened here.
Yeah, I'm afraid, people are going in harm's way. We saw recently, of course, in Gaza, the same thing happened with 3 of our ex-servicemen who got caught up in the conflict. These are not cushy jobs by any means. And, they know what they're going to. They're trained to sort of conduct themselves in these circumstances, but it's never risk-free.
And quite a few former servicemen take part in this kind of work, done the close protection work. They have huge experience of arenas of battle, which makes their services very, very valuable and worthwhile. And they're going into theatres of war like this, particularly to keep journalists safe. Very, very noble occupation. Is there any strategic fallout of the fact that a British national has been killed like this? Or, as you say, Chris Parry, is this purely part of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and sadly, tragically inevitable in these circumstances?
Yeah, I'm afraid it is. I mean, there is no strategic significance other than the fact that it's one more British death we can chalk up to Vladimir Putin and his criminal regime in Moscow. If they hadn't have invaded the place, then Ryan would still be alive today. He'd be probably serving somewhere else, but obviously not in Ukraine. But I think, Martin, what's really worth stressing is the Ukrainian people are having to sort of suffer this every day of the week. 366 days this year, they're having to suffer this because of the onslaught from the Russians. And they have to get the greatest support from us and also the knowledge that we will stick with them to the end.
Okay, our thoughts, of course, with Ryan Evans' family at this time. Thank you very much for joining us. Former NATO Commander Rear Admiral Chris Parry, thank you for helping us on that story. Now, the Prince of Wales has been leading tributes to the former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who has died from pancreatic cancer, sadly, at the age of 76. And GB News' reporter Jack Carson joins us now from one of Sven's former clubs, Manchester City. Jack, welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, good afternoon to you, Martin. I mean, Manchester City have lowered their flags here at the Etihad Stadium to half-mast in memory of Sven-Göran Eriksson. He took over as manager here in 2007, that summer, of course, after he left England in 2006. He was the first manager here in 38 years to lead City to do the double over Manchester United, finishing 9th in the Premier League that season, leaving shortly after the season ended. But he was here as City started to overturn their fortunes, started to get investment, started to bring in a lot of continental talent, who oversaw very much the start of that change, at least in the start of City's fortunes within the Premier League. And doing that double has certainly meant that a lot of City fans here have such great memories of him as well. You were mentioning the Prince of Wales and his message that he's put out on X, the social media platform, saying that he was sad to hear about the passing of Sven-Göran Eriksson, saying how he met him several times as England manager, always struck by his charisma and passion for the game. His thoughts, he says, are with his family and friends, and he calls him a true gentleman of the game as well. That's what one fan who I spoke to today called him as well, called him a gentleman. He was from Norway, part of the Man City Norway supporters club, and as neighbouring countries to Sweden, talked about his passion that he saw from Sven and how much of a gentleman he was as well. When you listen to the way players talk about him, very much liking the way that he was calm in the dressing room under pressure. He was calm, provided that calm voice maybe when there were some stormy times. At England, he couldn't have got off to a better start as manager. Of course, everyone will remember that 5-1 win at the time in qualifying against Germany in Munich back in 2001, and manager, of course, to the infamous free kick from David Beckham at Old Trafford against Greece, which secured qualification to the World Cup in Japan as well. He managed across the world, in the Philippines, in England, in China, all across the world. Everyone today, of course, bringing their thoughts to Sven and his family at this tragic death, which he was very openly admitted he knew he wouldn't have long left to live back when he announced his pancreatic cancer diagnosis earlier this year. But take a listen to what that fan I spoke to a little bit earlier on told us.
I think he's been so well respected in Italy, Norway, England. He was your national coach. He was a gentleman. He wasn't. He was just a kind, normal, nice person. I'm a Norwegian, and we are next door neighbors to Sweden. And Sven, for me, was a superman. He was kind, a gentleman, a totally perfect character.
Well, in the period since his diagnosis, he talked very openly about his long-held affection for Liverpool, for wanting and never being able to achieve managing a game at Anfield. That was until just a couple of months ago when he was able to manage a charity match, talking about how it was a huge memory, absolutely beautiful, and Liverpool in that charity match against Ajax won 4-2 for Sven. And since his diagnosis, he's done a documentary which was released just a few days ago. In that, he gives his own personal goodbye to the world in a very emotional message. But he says in that message that he thinks he had a good life. He says, we're all scared of the day that we die, but life is about death as well. He says, don't be sorry, smile, thank you for everything, take care of yourself, take care of your life and live it as well.
Marvellous words there, Jack Carlton at the Etihad Stadium. Tributes there to Sven-Göran Eriksson continue to pour in. Thank you very much. Now, are the Gallagher brothers getting back together? Is it finally time to crack open that champagne supernova? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
EasyJet is launching a new recruitment drive focused on attracting cabin crew members over 50 and those even considering retirement.
Well, the initiative is called Returnships and is inspired by research that suggests that 75% of people over 50 years old believe that now is the ideal time to embark on a new career.
Joining us now to discuss what it takes to embark on a second career as cabin crew is Helen Williams. Good morning, Helen.
Hi, good morning, Helen.
Welcome. Just touching down in our studio.
It is. I've had a few days off and now I'm here.
So you are now cabin crew.
I am.
What inspired you to get into it? What did you do before? How did it all come around?
Oh, so when I graduated, I took an office job with my grad scheme, and that job lasted 6 months, and I started working for a European carrier. I did just over 5 years at that European carrier and had an absolutely fabulous time. I then went on to a wet lease operation with an Irish carrier and another mainline UK carrier. I then decided to have time out. I had a business, I had a family, I had children, and last autumn I decided, why not? Let's go back and do it all again. So returning to that European carrier that I'd worked at when I was in my early 20s.
And what is that like for you now, returning that bit older, having that life experience, having your children, do you think that's been a benefit to you?
It's absolutely been a benefit. I mean, the amount of parents that thank me for helping me with their small children when they're crying on a flight. I am that person now.
When you went back for a second time, did you notice more sort of older people amongst your sort of colleagues?
I did. So when I returned onto my initial course in March of this year, just over half the course were over the age of 30.
Wow.
Which was absolutely phenomenal. And I was expecting to return and be with a lot of younger, 18, 19, 24. I was expecting to be that dinosaur. And that first day of training, to find out that I wasn't the dinosaur, you have no idea how exciting that was. And they've gone on, that particular group, to be phenomenal crew members.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back now. Liam and Noel Gallagher look set to announce their long-awaited return next week. At long last, the feuding brothers have reportedly struck a secret deal for a number of concerts next summer. And I'm joined now in the studio by the showbiz journalist. She's electric. It's Hayley Palmer. Hayley, now welcome to the show. Now, some might say this is an awesome comeback, long, long overdue. 30 years this week since Definitely Maybe came out. So is that the catalyst, or is it something else? Is it like, for example, a massive divorce bill?
Well, who says it's about the money? I mean, I don't want to be the one to say that, but he did have to pay $30 million to his ex-wife. So we'll let everyone at home, think what you think about that one. But look, this is going to be the hottest ticket in town. Come on. Is this not the best news today? I've had so many calls from some of my old school friends, people of a certain age, that are just like, this is the best news ever. A lot of guys and girls walking around today very, very happy with this news. And I just hope, Martin, that this is not a wind-up, that this is actually happening, because rumour has it it's going to be a year till they start gigging. Are they not going to have a big fallout in between then?
It's going to be a year, so they're announcing tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Are they having a party all night and just, like, coming on air at 8 o'clock? Because that's a funny time, isn't it? That's when I'm having my Weetabix.
It's a very un-Oasis time. It's a very un-rock-and-roll star sort of time. But maybe that's the point. They've got expensive bills, £20 million, and rumour has it, maybe you can fill us in with some showbiz goss, Hayley, that Sarah McDonald, Noel Gallagher's ex-wife, was the barrier to the two brothers getting back together, because Liam and Sarah, has to be said, didn't really like each other whatsoever. But now she's out of the way, perhaps that's the catalyst, along with the moolah, to get them back together.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always things, isn't there, in families, especially behind the scenes. And when they broke up, there was just so much going on. They were, like, at each other's throats. It was volatile. But they do seem to be a lot nicer about each other. They've calmed down a little bit. So, and sometimes it takes time. But look, for me, it's about the music. And those songs stand the test of time. We're still singing them now. And for me, music industry's just got a bit boring. I'm like, we want a bit of rock and roll, don't we?
And do we know where they're going to play? There's rumours they want to beat Taylor Swift's record of 8 nights at Wembley. They're going for 10 nights at Wembley, but are they going to go outside of London?
Yes, I've heard that they're going to go up north. For me, they've got to do Glastonbury on the Sunday night. That would be epic. That's the one. I'm not going to say anything until I see it in writing tomorrow at 8 o'clock, because...
But the point is, though, Oasis have put it out as a tweet, Liam's put it out as a tweet, Noel's put it out as a tweet, so it seems that at last they're all on the same page.
OK, I just don't want to get my hopes up, Martin, that's all. But I do want a bit of singing from you, because I've heard that you're a great singer.
No, I'm terrible. Why don't you give us a blast?
I'm tone deaf. I'll let you do it.
I can't do it. Now, some might say it's time to end the show. Thank you very much, Hayley. Always a pleasure. Now, there's a new way to get in touch. Get in touch the usual ways, GBNews.com/you'll say. It's Jubes & Co is up next. Now, if you haven't had enough of me on this Bank Holiday Monday, I'm back on GBN tonight, 7 till 8 p.m. We're going to be covering the Notting Hill Carnival again today. We've covered that a lot today. There were 90 arrests last night. There were a bunch of stabbings. One was a life-threatening incident. Is it time to lose the Notting Hill Carnival, or at least to move it into a safer venue? That's all coming up. I'll be back 7 till 8, but now it's time for your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It's a bit of a northwest southeast split over the next 24 hours. Wet and windy weather moving in from the Atlantic, but temperatures rising in the sunshine towards the southeast. High pressure here keeping it largely settled, but low pressure moving in from the Atlantic will bring some wet and windy weather across northern and western areas for the next few days. Across the UK for Monday evening, plenty of dry weather across England and Wales, however turning wetter and windier across Northern Ireland into Scotland as this next weather system moves in. The rain turning heavy as we head into the early hours. A Met Office rain warning coming into force by the end of the night. Southerly winds picking up too, drawing in some warm air, temperatures largely staying in double figures. So it's a wet start to the day on Tuesday across Scotland with outbreaks of heavy rain. There could be some local disruption, particularly across western and southern areas. We've seen quite a lot of rain here over recent weeks. Some tricky